Hello, everyone. Welcome to the LightBringers podcast, the first of 2022. I am very happy to be back with my awesome friends who will be introduced very shortly, who have been trying to make me laugh throughout the intro and leading up to. They did a good job, but I am the best, so everything is fine. I hope you are well. They can't hear you yet, thankfully, because they will be able to momentarily, but it is time to bring them on. They can hear you now, but first of all, I want to say thank you very much for continuing to join us into 2022 on the podcast. I'm excited to have a brand new year worth of episodes. This is episode... Well, it's in the 30s. Somewhere.
30-something.
It's 30-something. And we're getting on up there. But also, End of Dragons is coming out in a month, 34. I think it's 35, actually. It could be. I don't want to mess with Reader Geek, the mod of awesome in the channel, but... I
don't know. Reader Geek knows everything. So, Jeb,
34.
I would not cross Reader. Yeah, that's right.
It is 30. Yeah, you're actually right. Anyway, I look like a fool now. Yeah, another episode. But we're actually talking about, there's going to be some fun stuff. Because on Twitter and all the places and YouTube and everything else, people are like, I want a release date for End of Dragons. And it's like, everyone's talking about their plans. Yeah, well, everyone does. Kroof does as well. But before we start talking about that and why we're talking about that specifically, as well as during End of Dragons and post End of Dragons, I know it's not released yet, but we've got to talk about our fears and concerns and also enjoyment factor. Couldn't think of a word there that was going to fit in. Of while the expansion is releasing and coming out, because always in the past we've had a little bit of a fun issue with Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, and all the post stuff. I'm making no sense, so let's get into the introductions. Rook is here. How are you doing? Tell us what you do, where you do it, and any changes that may have occurred as well.
For a second, I went, changes? What? What do you mean, changes? And then I went, oh yeah, I guess I did have a whole rebrand that went through.
It's not that two-pack song, which is good, but...
Yeah. I have not started playing that 24/7 on my stream yet, but...
What about the David Bowie song?
That one I do play 24/7.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah.
But don't do MCA because, there's loads of stuff going around about that. Right
no,
now.
it's a self-performance of it that I do on loop while live. So I think it falls under fair use as a cover. So cool. I don't do this. But what I do actually do on my channel is a ton of Guild Wars 2 and Final Fantasy 14. I love to do everything in the games from, casual stuff and even role-playing all the way up to endgame content. I just love talking about MMOs and connecting with all the good stuff in them, particularly lore, story, and the ways that MMOs kind of bring to life the worlds that we all get to enjoy. So we did have a channel name change finally at last that I think maybe we talked about right before we went on our holiday hiatus here, but I am now officially Rookery, Rookuri. Formerly I was Bird of Chess on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, but you can now find me at Rookery, Rookuri again, and the only difference is that on Twitter I am following the Kroof example, and I have an underscore after the name until I can pry the just name by itself out of Twitter's cold dead hands.
And the other change is that you are no longer a professional chess player.
Yes, correct. Yeah, okay. I have stopped my chess career. So
not only have you stopped a career, you have forgotten how to play chess, which is
I never even started.
I can train you if you like. God. My dad was a chess champion. We can do that. I can train you if you want. Let's just change it all up. Okay.
Let's do it right now, here, in this moment.
I see an awesome person in the chat as well, Glenn Angel. We can get an amazing shout out for them as well. One of our past guests who's very, very awesome as well. That would be amazing. Yes, Kroof is back, looking amazing today. By the way.
Oh, thank you so much.
I don't always just compliment people randomly out of the blue. But Kroof has made this special effort once again. I'm not saying that we don't do that individually. Now I feel bad.
No, Jebro, it's fine.
Never does that for me.
You called me ugly, trash,
Boots
and stinky.
Rook, you're very, very beautiful as well.
Thank you.
Jebro, you are also beautiful.
Thank you.
Everyone here, very beautiful. Very proud of all of us.
Did a straw poll on that chat, but
we don't need to do straw polls anymore. You can just do a vote in the chat.
True.
Does
Oh my God,
everyone look
technology.
good today? Barring.
We all look fantastic. But hi everyone, I'm Kroof. I'm back. It's a new year, same old me. You know, showing the crowd that I have not changed at all, nor do I plan on it. But no, I'm doing a lot of YouTube stuff, a lot of Twitch stuff. Twitter, honestly, is like my new frontier for just utter enjoyment. It's so much fun. So yeah, I'm having a great time on the internet. And you know what? I'm here again, so I'm gonna have another great time on the internet today. So, well, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. Woo! Dab. Okay.
Great.
It wouldn't have
Wow.
been a 2022 LightBringers episode if you didn't reign in the new year with a dab, Kroof. So
That's true. Yeah, that's true. And last but certainly not least, Boots is back. Boots,
And how do I look?
you look very good.
amazing as
look
always.
Good. You
I
always
got a
look
Not
haircut.
picking
I got a
up.
haircut on Tuesday.
I know.
Yeah.
How much does a haircut cost you?
$25.
Really?
Oh.
Jesus.
Is that a lot?
I don't know. I haven't had my haircut for like 20 years.
Back in Montreal, you could get one for like $15 Canadian, but for some reason down in the States it's more expensive. I don't know
Okay.
why.
I got it for free my entire life, and I cut my own hair now because my mother was a hairdresser. So
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Very
Okay.
nice.
Boots. Tell us a bit about yourself. What you do, what you do.
Well, I'm Boots. That's BOOTTS.
I did it again.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
Uh-huh.
I did it too. I did it too on my most recent video.
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
have never done it because
Yeah,
I
that's because you never refer to me.
Never referred to Boots.
I refer to you. What?
When? Give me one example.
Wow.
I like how you're going, wow, like you know you haven't. Like, yeah. Oh,
I definitely
wow.
have. Well, the only reason that I know is because I honestly don't remember what it was that I was typing this past week. It must have been on something. Maybe it was a comment on one of the tweets that you did or that Jeb did for the Lightbringers coming back. But I did type your name the first time with only
maybe.
one T, and then
Oh,
had to go back
boy.
and add the
Alright.
second T.
I'll go
So-
find out,
Okay.
and you and
Alright.
Boots can do the intro for their stuff.
Oh yeah. So I do the bad builds and stuff on YouTube, which will start up again once the expansion hits.
Yeah.
And besides that, I've been doing Host of Ascalon with Alona and Hashtag, and coming on here every once in a while. And I've been streaming a little bit. Every week I do
Yeah.
about 2 streams a week.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Awesome.
Oh, at Boots _. Well, should I just remove the WOE and just do Boots _?
Probably.
I mean, yeah, it
Would
would
make
fall in line
sense.
with the rest of us. Yeah.
Does everyone look
Jebro.
beautiful today? 80% hell yes, 12 votes. So the other people who said no, ban them. Ban
Who
them out.
said no?
Who would say no?
No's not even an
Honestly.
option on the poll, Jeb.
So wait a minute, how is it only 80%?
Because
What are the
The other
options?
20% was just Kroof.
Oh,
there you go,
okay. I
yeah.
didn't even see the other option.
No, I'm
Okay.
invisible, I guess.
I just
to Jebro.
I just assumed the option is just like I didn't even look actually. Thank you.
Today's
Mods.
actually a tell-all episode of the Lightbringers. Here we're bringing up and airing out all the issues from 2021. Boots feels that I never refer to him. Jebro doesn't know that Kroof exists. There's a lot of things going on right now.
Oh yeah, I'm just bad at streaming as well. Generally,
Also,
by looking at the
I
chat.
don't know if I'm gonna be able to make the switch between. I'm really attached to Bird of Chess, and I don't know. It's gonna take me some time.
I don't think you've ever called Rook Bird of Chess either on this podcast.
I don't think any of us really have.
Well, that's because Boots doesn't
I
ever
probably
refer to me.
Oh,
Oh no! In this corner,
Oh,
Bird of Ch- look.
I have nothing to say.
Like, where's my
that's accurate.
dwarf thing? That's not gonna work apparently. Oh well.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's have a podcast, shall we? Let's do that. Okay, so End of Dragons. We have. We have, depending on when we think the release date will be, and chats as well. I want to get your inputs to start getting some numbers out there, some dates. Next month is End of Dragons. They said the latter half of Feb. And on Twitter, we've actually had devs even coming out saying, we are putting the finishing touches / polish onto this. So Grouch and numerous other devs have been saying this now in the last week.
Yeah, I've seen bug fixing being done right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to ask each of you. I have my date in my head. The only reason I have the 22nd of February is mostly because of because of two, because of the twos. It's pretty much the only reason. And it's a Tuesday. Past expansions, now I'm pretty sure I'm right about this unless the calendar's wrong, was on October 23rd for Heart of Thorns, which was a Friday, and September 22nd for Path of Fire, which was a Friday. I thought they were actually Thursdays. So previously it's been released on Fridays. If someone wants to tell me in chat that I'm very wrong, or anyone else, please do so.
You're very wrong.
I'm pretty sure it's Fridays. So I want a release date and a reason why. And it can just be a silly reason if you want it to be. I don't care. Kroof.
February 1st, because I can't wait anymore. Anyway, that's probably not going to be February
serious.
1st.
What are you talking about? That's exactly how Kroof feels.
Yeah, no. I mean, it is really...
Yeah, it is.
It's really wild to think. I've been talking about this with some of my friends in my Discord that, like, we were supposed to be already playing End of Dragons. It was originally supposed to release at the end of 2021.
Aren't you glad that we're not, though?
I mean, probably, because I would much rather have some more time to, polish these things. And, from what we've seen, I don't know, I want to say just give them as much time as they can. But nevertheless, in terms of the date, I'm really feeling, I think it could be 22, just to change it up a bit. I don't think they have to release it on the same day that they've released the other expansions. But I think they are probably going to go the 25th, maybe. Just, they're going to give themselves as much time as possible. They said late February.
Yeah.
There's also the Lunar New Year festival that you have to take into consideration, maybe. Do they want to drop that at the end of that, in the middle of it? There's a couple things that go into play. So I would like to see the 22nd, because it'd just be earlier. It's a Tuesday. Most patches are on Tuesdays, but in line with the expansions, maybe the 25th.
Right.
Oh, me.
That is your name. Well, it's not your name.
I think on Host Bascalon we settled on the 22nd because it's a nice date. It's a very nice date, Yeah. It sounds like a little machine gun, twos, two,
Well, like a Tommy gun, kind of.
Yeah, like a little Tommy gun, yeah.
I wish that actual machine guns just went two.
Wow, and now Boots' whole image of machine guns is just
is that not how they? That's not how they sound.
No, they usually sound like this.
What?
That's also how I pronounce that date.
Kroof is a professional voice actor now.
Showing the full range of their talent.
I just did my second audiobook. That's also something that was new. So yeah.
Really cool.
Yes, I didn't want to say it without you mentioning it first, but you failed, so I will bring it in.
But I don't know. I also like February 18th for some reason.
18th? Why?
It's earlier.
Oh.
I agree.
It's Friday. Not out of the realms of possibility, I don't think. I think it could be. It could be that previous Friday. And then because then maybe on the 22nd they could even just bring out the first hard mode strike or something. You never know.
Sure, yeah.
Possible? Okay.
Eh.
I mean, the Kroof's got Boots has got 2. I've got and now we go to Rook.
I mean, I pretty much feel the same as both of you kind of combined. I think it's more likely that we'll probably get it on the 25th. That gives them the whole month to do everything. We know there's going to be that release live stream as well. So like, it feels like having it all happen towards the end of the month gives them the most of the month to prepare. And that would be a Friday. But it does kind of feel like if your game is called Guild Wars 2 and this expansion is coming out, and you have a possible release date of 2/22/22 for Guild Wars 2. Like, that is just so good. That's so catchy. That's so memorable. So a little part of me is kind of hoping that they do it on that date, but I think it's probably more likely we'll see it the 25th. Maybe they'll do something like the live stream on the 22nd or something like that, just to, you know, kind of kick it off. But
okay. Yeah. Remember, 28 days in February this year.
If
Right, I also said the emblem for End of Dragons is 2 dragons.
that's true, that is true. I think it's an opportunity that if they pass it up, it'll be like, in terms of the internet culture, it'd be like, damn. But
Maybe it's too obvious, maybe.
Ooh, obvious.
Okay.
I think it's perfectly
Bits.
the right amount of obvious. I think that would be fantastic. It's just like, come on, to me that seems like that'd be so catchy. It feels like too that they could have already announced it and like been marketing that whole thing, you know, like the 2/22/22. It would have been really good, but
There's going to be many hidden messages within the podcast today with the number 2.
And that's another thing about like the marketing of a release date. And it is, a lot of people have been talking about that. It's like, it's strange that we haven't gotten it yet.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about it. I mean, well, actually, we can mix that in as well. Art Thorns, how early did we know Art Thorns was coming out? I feel like we knew for a while.
I think we knew for probably like a month or 2, or maybe 3. Because remember, like, it was during the raids and then IGN accidentally leaked it early.
Oh, IGN. Jesus.
I think I remember that's how that happened. And then they had to like,
Good Lord.
and then during like Colin Johansson and Ruby came on during the raid live stream, and they're in the very beginning, they're like, oh, we have an announcement. This is the release
And then like
date.
Colin's like, it's coming
fast.
out on OnlyFans, and
Oh my god.
if you need a reference for that, it's because Colin Johansson bought a t-shirt. He's gonna kill me for saying this.
It's on the internet.
ever since that happened, I live in constant fear that I am going to say the same. I was talking about the new Griffin plush that's up on the For Fans by Fans store and how cute it was on stream the other day. And somebody teased in chat, like, oh, you mean OnlyFans? And I went, oh my gosh, did I say it? Did I say it?
But like the thing is, no one would have cared that much if you'd done it. It would have been funny. But like on the Guild Wars 2 stream, like Colin literally didn't clock that it said the wrong thing until he came out of the room.
I think we should make either a Guild Wars 2 character OnlyFans account or a
I don't think we should do that.
Flesh Griffin.
Sitting there, a gold mine for
Exactly.
Isn't Farron like already got one? Probably.
But all of that to say, I mean, yes, I guess as far as like the greater context of MMOs go, it is strange and or game release to not have a date that's been announced way in advance, right? Like most companies, at least as far as I have experienced, do say like, I don't know, maybe half a year before, like this is the date, this is the release, as they start their kind of amp up into their media circuits. But at the same time, we have seen with almost every company ever, but particularly in the last couple years with this pandemic, that basically every major release that has happened during this has been delayed. And so in a sense, I almost feel like it's better to just say, this is our release window. And then when they are absolutely sure that this is going to be the date, to release that date. Because we just saw with like Final Fantasy XIV, for example, the date, much like End of Dragons, had been pushed back already far in advance by several months. Then there were some more delays. And then we had last minute, like, I don't even know, maybe less than a month before the expansion came out, another pushback of the date. Yeah, it was about 2 weeks, right? And people had already at that point taken off vacation time and all sorts of things. And I mean, of course, the community was very understanding, and it makes sense with the context of the current climate and everything that's happening for game studios. But I'm kind of glad in a sense that I think when they give us the date, we can all feel very much like, that's gonna be the date. Like, that's it.
Star Wars The Old Republic did that as well recently. Star Wars The Old Republic pushed back their date from end of 2021 to February, which is around probably gonna be the same time. So like everything. But yeah, but people were a little bit more pissed off because it's EA.
Oh.
So, you know,
got
people
the
automatically already have the rage of EA there. And then it's just the added disappointment. So, yeah, a little bit less understanding, I think, from the Star Wars.
Isn't there more to a release date than just being able to push the patch live, though? Isn't there coordination with retail and stuff like that as well, that they should already know this date beforehand? And it's probably the date is already fixed, but we just don't know it yet.
Well, no, yeah, they know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we could say it might get delayed, so they're not telling us yet. But so great, but at the same time, there probably is a date.
Yeah, I think they internally have a date.
Oh, of course, yeah,
But
by
in terms
now.
of marketing and making it public, I think similar to what Rook was saying, it is smart because we, especially with Final Fantasy XIV, that was such a specific instance where you were 2 weeks out and then they came across a bug that they had to address. When most of the times when we've seen large delays like this, they've been like a month or two in advance. And they're just like, hey, we have to push it back a couple months. So far, we haven't gotten that with Guild Wars 2, but there is always the possibility, as we saw recently, that they'll come up to the wire and they'll be like, oh no, we have a big bug that we gotta fix. It's like, so
They do tend to kind of leave that stuff in sometimes as well.
they do, but if it's something where it's like, someone in my Discord was talking about like where they have a bug that compromises their security of their servers, of their data, like those large things, they would then have to do that. But I would assume that they probably have those ironed out, but there's always the chance, a slim chance. But you know, I hope in a couple weeks. I mean, a part of me doesn't want them to even give us a release date in advance. Well, a part of me just wants them to drop it without warning.
I saw your tweet about that.
I was
almost
really
going to retweet
marketing.
and say, I'm unfollowing Kroof everywhere.
You should, but
I was like, no, Kroof.
I mean, it would be terrible marketing. It'd be terrible.
But I kind of just, I feel like that is the essence of the
You're going back to
2-year loop we've been in. And
No.
it would be awful, but I think it would just be like, you wake up one day and End of Dragons is available, and you're like, oh
Yeah,
god.
but Kroof, I don't want to go back to the days of being surprised and delighted, because in those days we didn't know anything about the game. It was like, you know, I'll be surprised and delighted that you told me something. You know?
I mean, I agree
It
that
doesn't matter what it is.
sometimes a surprise release can, in and of itself, to some degree, generate hype or like sudden burst of discussion. I mean, in chat, Glenn mentioned Beyonce, right? Or like these things where there is like this massive release that drops, or some song or album or single or whatever it is that drops, that can generate in and of itself almost this huge reaction. But in the case of Guild Wars 2, although it would be on par for the energy of our pandemic years, I think that it would perhaps, I mean, like you were saying, Jeb, harken back to a different mentality in the game that I think they're really, really working to change, right? This idea that, you know, they've been so much more communicative. We've had so many more sessions, live streams, blog posts, all kinds of things. So I have no doubt that we will get a date announced. But it is funny because I think there are a lot of people who maybe are even new to the game who feel very uncertain because there isn't like a date set in stone right now, which is fair. But at the same time, like I said, I honestly think it's kind of smarter in the long run, so long as they do give themselves some time beforehand for people to actually start talking about the date and sharing about their plans and being excited about like the release is happening here, and everybody's like, oh, now I have a hard date that I need to get the game, or I need to play the expansion. And
my guess is we will be told the date during the live stream for Kining City on the 28th.
Did you just read my mind, Boots? Did you just
I think a lot of
crawl
people are
into my
thinking
ear
that, Kroof.
canal?
I think that's
I was just like, when do we think we're gonna get the date? And you're
That's
just like,
the only time they're actually talking to us.
Yeah.
So they have to. They have to. I mean, if they don't, like, I would say, like, why do you think they would wait that long, Boots?
Well, they've waited long enough already. Why not wait until the 28th at this point?
That's true.
And that would
That's
be
true.
a month. That would more so kind of be a month in advance. If they release it on like the 25th, assuming they release it on like late February.
Yeah, agreed.
It's interesting, isn't it, that you would wait that long? I mean, one thing you could say is that there was already, like, if you know a release date for the expansion, like, you can get excited, but then you wouldn't have everyone tweeting about it saying, when are you releasing an in Guild Wars 2? Like I saw Sneb today. Sneb was like tweeting in Guild Wars 2, got 60 likes, like, I'm moving at the end of the month, like at the end of February, please tell me the release date. And like people are saying like random stuff. I feel like saying, you know, oh, I really want a cheese sandwich. Can you please like tell me what the release date is so I can plan it? You know?
Yeah.
I'm just like...
There's arguments like that. I think a lot of people are waiting to like... A lot of people I've seen actually want to take off work for the release date of the expansion, and it makes sense, I guess. So yeah, so I could see why you'd want it. If you can't, it would probably be, we'd still probably have at least 3 weeks advance notice, I'm guessing, for the release date. So if your job doesn't let you take 1 day off in advance with a 3 days advance notice, then
a lot of people's jobs don't.
1 day off?
I need a month.
You can't even take a sick day?
I don't even get paid. I have to give a month's notice.
Yeah,
that's rough.
It is rough.
Probably not smart, but it is kind of an interesting marketing phenomena of having so much social media engagement of people like boosting the numbers and just always talking about Guild Wars 2. Not necessarily in a glorified positive way, but just like showing that people are really hungry for a release date. In a way, it's actually like it could help somewhat just from like seeing so many people be invested in the expansion. Not an opportune one, but you know, maybe there's a silver lining to this somewhere.
I do think that it would make sense to me to try to line it up about that 1 month, like you were saying, Boots. And I mean, it's so funny because this morning I did just get the notification in my email that the Aurene statue had shipped. If anybody else got the super shiny Aurene statue, because I couldn't.
If you on the next podcast, if you haven't got that on like a little plinth next to your face, I'm just gonna be very sad.
She will accompany me everywhere. But if we kind of look at that as something like what I would make the equivalent of a physical collector's edition item, right? Yeah. I feel like that's kind of the thing they did, rather than offering like a physical collector's edition in the past, like we saw with the Ritlock statue. You know, they usually had some kind of character figurine, but because so many games and companies are moving more towards that digital copies, or, you know, especially with Guild Wars 2, even as they expand to Steam, it kind of makes sense to me that like that release and that item correlates as our kind of collector's edition bonus if you felt like you wanted to buy it. So the fact that that has just shipped, the fact that we have this live stream coming up about a month in advance, like you were all saying, I do think it makes sense as far as like letting people have time to take off. It might also be a little bit of a nudge towards something like that 25th release, because if it does release on a Friday, another great point about that is the fact that then players immediately have the entire weekend. And while not every player will have work off on the weekend, I do think that sometimes lining that up helps people, because a lot of people do tend to have time off with that. So with the shorter time frame and everything else, it would make sense to me. But a month does feel comfy for me as far as giving people enough time where if they can get off, they could ask for it.
And about other release dates, though. So what do you guys think about, like, I've been thinking a lot about the Steam release date. Do we have any idea when that might be happening?
Have a little chat about that. My door's just been knocked out. I'll be right back. But have a little chat. Yes, this is going to be on the list. I just put it on the list as well. So have a little chat about that and see how. Think about go.
Jebro's like, someone just kicked down my door. I have to leave. Sorry.
I'm being mugged. So sorry, everybody. My house is being robbed. I've got to go right now, but keep the podcast going. And I'll play them off.
Nonchalant. There's a fire, but keep talking. Actually, you bring up a really good point, because I've also been thinking about that. I feel like we just kind of all share a hive mind as the Guild Wars 2 community. Like, we all just subconsciously start thinking about the same things around the same time, because I've been really wondering the past couple of weeks. I'm like, we were supposed to have Guild Wars 2 on Steam like months ago, and then they delayed it. And I assume we'll hear more about it after End of Dragons launches, probably within the month, I hope, because Steam can also for marketing of the game, because a lot of people peruse Steam, but also just like people enjoy using Steam. And there are ways to put Guild Wars 2 in the Steam library right now, but having something more concrete on Steam and have that marketing aspect. And I'm not a huge Steam goer myself, so there might be other aspects that I'm missing, but it's a really interesting road to go down with Guild Wars 2, because like they were for a long time like we're never going to do it because they had, you know, NC Soft issues and publishing and all that stuff. So I really want to hear more about Steam. Like
I personally really want it to happen because I'm looking at that Steam Deck thing, and I really want to get it if Guild Wars 2 comes to Steam, so then I could play Guild Wars 2 mobile.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we pre-ordered one, and that's a huge thing, right? There's been talk for so long about the idea of Guild Wars 2 on consoles or something like that. And while the Steam Deck is it called Steam Deck? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. While Steam Deck, you know, isn't in and of itself going to be like a, you know, translation directly like you would port it to multiple console platforms and stuff, right? The fact that there will now be a different option for accessibility with that platform and mobile play, in addition to just reaching the audience that Steam has.
Yeah,
you know?
it's gonna have a huge bump of an audience for Guild Wars 2 if it comes. The issue is though, yeah, when's the timing for it, right? Like,
or for Steam.
Yeah, for Steam, because I mean, it's obviously not going to come before or at the release of End of Dragons, right?
No, they're not ready for that. They're not ready for Steam.
Rook, do you think that it would be better for them to like wait a month or two after the expansion, have all the bugs that might come with the expansion ironed out, and then release on Steam?
I mean, I do. It's tough because honestly, I think for me looking at it as somebody who, again, is not a professional when it comes to this kind of timing, marketing, etc. in games, but just has my humble experience playing them, I would say that it would make sense to me if they had been able to get it out even like a month before End of Dragons actually went live, so that they could have the game on there and then also have pre-orders for End of Dragons up.
That would have been good.
People, like, that would have been so good to me. But again, when you're working with a company like Steam, I think there are even other considerations just beyond like getting the game to work with it or whatever else they might have to take into it. There's a lot of bigger things and contract stuff, and I don't know, whatever specifications Steam might have, whatever ways they might need to modify things. So there might be a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that on top of all of the development for the expansion, again, like Jeb said, it just made it impossible for it to be manageable right now. So I guess that, yes, the next best thing would be to let the hype of the expansion hit, and then kind of like we see for a lot of games, I don't know, Final Fantasy VII Remake came to mind, where everybody wanted the PC version and they were yelling about like, when are we going to get PC version? And, you know, they waited way long. That feels like that was way too long of a window. So I do think there's like a sweet spot where as the hype of the expansion hits in the next month, 2 months, maybe 3 months max, I think that would be their window to really still be riding that high of the expansion and have people who are hearing the chatter who would then be interested in getting that traffic directly to look for it on a platform like Steam.
ESO had problems as well. Sorry, Kroof. It had like ESO, and ESO actually still has problems, like sometimes with Steam as well. So that is something to kind of is an issue at times, I would say. Like, I mean, I remember when I started playing it, 2000, maybe like 2.5 years ago, people would start to log in during DLCs and stuff, and sometimes there would just be too much traffic, or servers would be down, something through Steam access, and I was like, oh damn, maybe this isn't a good time to release, like, you know, expansions and stuff. So maybe like I feel like what Rook's saying is kind of true. Also, like, I think they've had their own problems, whereas like maybe their engineers can't work with Steam because they're still working on the expansion stuff tech, and then there's like loads of stuff. So I feel like what you're saying again, Rook, is right, that, and this is what we're going to talk about, you know, post End of Dragons, and this I'm going to bring it back in a sec as well after Kroof has said the thing they want to say. What is going to carry the game on? What is going to carry the expansion on? What is going to carry Guild Wars 2, End of Dragons, New Wave, Go, Flip Mode, Wicked Time 2022, which is apparently what I'm calling it.
Double backflip.
But yeah, with a double backflip dab, here's Kroof. Yeah, and your name could be in there if you want it to be.
I think it has marketing potential.
Yeah, I won't pay any money though. I'm sorry.
Damn.
There will be royalties of 1 cent for every 1,000 views.
You know what? I will take it.
Okay, cool. Well, after a long time, you know, when you're probably
find a penny, pick it up, and
you know,
all day.
if you do it in your will,
you'll have okay luck.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in like 200 years, your family may have earned like $5. You know, I'm just
We
saying.
can finally get some toothpaste.
Yeah. What, you think in 200 years toothpaste isn't going to cost more than $5? I mean, inflation is a bastard.
Inflation, you're right.
It's
Ooh,
currently gonna
maybe
be-
I'll just steal it and then put the $5 on the counter.
Yeah. Joe.
But in terms of Steam,
I'm sorry.
I think the next best time would probably be around like a Living World release. Maybe not on the day,
Yeah.
but that kind of goes into like what are they going to do after End of Dragons? I feel like they have an idea of what they're going to do after the expansion, and that probably usually is like a Living World season or some other rebrand of a saga.
Yeah.
And I think that would probably be the best time because it will probably come within 3 months after the expansion, most likely, if they are currently working on it. And I think around that time, there would be more buzz around the community because people who played End of Dragons and took a break, they'd be coming back for hopefully the next season. And with that, then you can kind of start marketing End of Dragons and the new season kind of together and be like, oh, you still can, oh, look at this. You can still pre-purchase End of Dragons and then you get access to like Living World content. Look at, there's a new strike missions and a new challenge mode with this DLC, Living World patch, and like a new area where you're going back and there's something, I don't know, whatever they're going to do. That would probably be the best time.
Is that also the best time to finally implement world versus world alliances?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the probably next major patch, right? I mean, it's tough because I do feel like they could do something with those alliances depending on how this beta period goes, which just started today, and how they keep developing it. I think they could release that as something in the interim before a living season release, just to, you know, here it's officially implementing into the game. It's, you know, a quality of life sort of thing and an additional kind of bonus thing. And then you get the next story and additional content and stuff with the living season. But as far as actually bundling up the workload and releasing it all as one big thing, which oftentimes I think many companies do, I think that would make the most sense to have that be a full release within that major patch.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm waiting for World vs. World seasons to come back. I think you're right. They could probably, once the betas are done, as many bugs if possible are fixed, they can just slide in alliances into the game. They don't have to do like a major full, hey.
Boots, hold on to that. Hold on to it. Hold on to what you're about to say. We'll get there. I promise. We're gonna get there.
grasp it.
I just want that. I want you. I know you have a lot to say about it, and I'm very interested. But we're almost there. We're almost
We
there.
all know Boots is just
What
the
are we talking
talker
about
of the
now?
group.
We're gonna talk about. And it's woo. We're gonna talk about. I know. I'm just so excited today. I don't know. It's been a long week, man. I'm just in a like, where am I mode. Do you know what I mean? There's so much going on, and you're just like, I've got to be happy. It's just like, there's so much stuff. Where do you even start? And I'm so glad, like, this is such a good break. I appreciate you all. I really do. I'm serious. And I appreciate everyone in the chat live right here and everyone listening. This is my break, and it's so good and needed.
Jeb, you're doing great. You're going to be amazing. Your upcoming exams are going to be great. We're glad we can all make you laugh and talk about Guild Wars 2 on the podcast. Yeah.
Thank you. Right, okay. Post expansion Guild Wars 2. Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire. Personally, and I'm just going to put a quick point in before hitting it over to you. Post Heart of Thorns was probably better than post Path of Fire just because of raids specifically.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Like just because of raids. Because there was that content there, because it's been something which has been, I would say, I'm not sure if raids are successful. I think they're successful for us and for people that really enjoy them, which is a very small, tiny % of the community. And I think a larger part of the community like to watch and enjoy other people raiding in the game, because sometimes I think it fulfills their own desire to want to do it. But, and again, personal opinions, let's think about post Heart of Thorns first. How did that go? Did we remember it?
Oh,
Because I'm not sure if Rook, you were here for that.
I wasn't. Yeah, I didn't come in until right at the tail end of like the Heart of Thorns cycle leading into Path of Fire. So.
Oh, so what got you playing then? That's a good thing to actually think about, because obviously retention of players as well as the introduction of new players is should be part of that post expansion thought process, right?
Yeah,
it has
I mean,
to always
honestly,
be part of that.
Honestly, for me, it wasn't anything about marketing within those cycles, which I wish I could have said it was, because it would have been perfect to kind of support many points we've made on the podcast. But it was just because of word of mouth from players that they thought there were a lot of things. Well, yeah, but yes, correct. In that they felt that they wanted to recommend it as something that they also love, knowing that I had a love of MMOs and particularly MMOs that had strong story and interesting fantasy worlds and diversity. So I had a lot of people who were saying at that point, this game is so great. And again, there's nothing to lose by trying it. The whole base game is free. So I didn't really hear anything specifically about these, I guess, criticisms or, these kinds of post-release lulls until I myself started playing the game and getting into it. Because most people were just really excited about me getting to have the experience overall. Which is great. I mean, honestly. But in the case of like this kind of thing, I've said it before and I still stand by it. I think with Heart of Thorns, like everybody was saying, raids happened. So from the impression that I've gotten, that was something that people were excited about for the future of the game. They were able to work towards at that point. It gave them goals post expansion and, things that even if they hadn't done right away, they could keep building off of. Yeah. I know with Path of Fire, it seemed like there was a bigger gap. Right. I think at least, and again, please tell me you went through a lot of this as it happened. So please let me know if I'm wrong, but it seemed like we did get I'm trying to think through everything. It was very spread out. We did get a new Fractal. We got new raid. There were things like that, but the actual pacing of release, season 4, I loved, and I was there to play all of season 4 in the moment live as it happened, maybe a bit of season 3 too. But it was just really nice to be able to go through those, and I felt like there was a lot of content, and then there was some other stuff coming out. But again, it's always unpredictable.
I think you're right. I don't remember that well either, actually, but
I'm looking up dates now. Yeah.
I want to say though, with Heart of Thorns, my impression that I still kind of retain, even though I might be wrong, is that it was extremely ambitious, the amount of stuff they wanted to put into Heart of Thorns, and they kept their release date, and they were not able to finish a lot of the things they wanted to put into Heart of Thorns in time. And so past the release of Heart of Thorns was a lot of drip, and fixing.
Wasn't the raid? The raids were planned that way, though, weren't they?
The raids were planned to come in a little bit later.
Maybe because of what you said, probably.
That, but there was also the legendary items. There was also the maybe not quite perfectly conceived stronghold game mode. There was a lot of little things. And I remember it being a lot, like a good at least 3 months past the release was a lot of fixing things. Yeah. Including, I think they went back and completely redesigned like the difficulty level of the grind for some of the things to do in Heart of Thorns, like the mastery grind and the difficulty of some of the hearts and stuff like that. They had to keep adjusting the hero points one. There was one in Verdant Brink that I remember they nerfed for I think they've been nerfing for years. That one in the bottom left hand corner. Like, do you know in Verdant Brink when you're on the platform? Oh my god, that thing.
The Itzel, when you fight the Itzel?
Yeah. That one.
Yeah, that's a fun one. That's a fun one.
It is a fun one, yeah.
So I want to say, in my opinion, even though Path of Fire I think you're right, did have like a little bit more of a pause before the new content came out after Path of Fire came out. I think that it was a more complete package for what it was trying to give.
The living world specifically is what you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about I want to say Path of Fire was was a much more polished expansion than Heart of Thorns was.
Oh, okay, right, cool. I mean, okay, this is what I'm thinking about. So let's think about the living world, and we'll think about that and how close they came afterwards. Because I would.
Well, if I could play devil's advocate real quick.
Yeah, go.
DA, if I can play DA, defense attorney.
Dragon Age. Okay, that's a good game.
Dragon Age 2, yeah. To put my hat in the ring of this discussion, I think there was. I think Path of Fire had a better post moment than Heart of Thorns did. And yes, raids were really strong, but only for a small population of the community.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if you enjoyed raids, that was the time I was getting into raids. There was a consistent flow of new wings, and that was something so new to Guild Wars 2, where we had consistent classical endgame PvE in the game. However, it took like a year or so for the living world to start up, and that was such a heavy drought, because even if you're a raider, you're only getting like 2 bosses, 3 bosses every 2-3 months.
True.
And the entire time of that, I think it was because there were so many systems with Heart of Thorns, it really was straining their ability to start Living World, or to even conceptualize Living World, because they had to go back and fix things. They had to tackle War versus World. They had to tackle Stronghold, and also just like the difficulty of the maps. And then they eventually
about the Stronghold, please.
It was definitely a marketed aspect of Heart of Thorns.
I know. I literally commentated on the Guild Wars channel in front of 6,000 or 7,000 people in the first ever official tournament, and all the pro players just basically crapping all over the mode. And like once that happened, everyone hated it. But like, you know, I actually was really, it was my thing that I was genuinely excited for the most, and I was deeply saddened. But anyway.
So I think for Path of Fire, I will just say that there was a shorter time period for not only Living World, which many players get into, but there was also a raid wing release, which was very bold, and like, oh, they started off within a short time period and with a lot of things to do with that release. And also the map for season 4 was one of the most replayed ones of that season. So it was a really strong start for the after moments of Path of Fire.
I agree with Kroof. Oh yeah, well, Kroof, when you were talking, it just brought up a bunch of things that I was going, oh, this is actually really interesting to talk about, right? Because when we're thinking about Heart of Thorns, and you were talking about the pacing of the living season, you know, I think the balance is to always provide some kind of covering of your bases, in a sense, right? When you're looking at how do we engage our community coming off of an expansion. So there are all these facets and different teams that support that within MMOs. Including your writing and story team, including your end game content. It's funny that for Heart of Thorns, having promised that they would have these legendaries up front and then having to like release them afterwards, it's funny that that is something that, I mean, you're right, yes, because of what they said, it wasn't the complete expansion experience. And yet, most other MMOs, or at least, you know, I'm thinking of 14 and their relic weapons and stuff like that, they save exactly those kinds of grinds for the patch cycles. Because then it's like, here's this stuff that I can engage the community in.
So it's post-expansion.
Yes.
So it's like releasing. So it's like releasing legendaries after. Sorry to interrupt. Just to get clear. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, because when you're thinking about it, right, you're like, what are we going to do? We need to provide a spectrum of different things, but then we also need to have like the next story beat so that people aren't left hanging too long. And when it came to raids and the pacing of the releasing of raids post Heart of Thorns, Kroof, when you were talking about that, I was sitting here and I just went, well, but the raids were in and of themselves a story. And then immediately I had this moment where I went, but there's no normal mode of those raids. So like, there's no, I don't even know how you would realize it. Like there's no just story immersive element of it where you could just go in by yourself and just play through them and get the story beats. And when you look at all the things that go into those raids, story, boss design, environment design, because of those big wings with all of the other stuff that surrounds them, no wonder Living Season was delayed for so long, because the pace that they were churning out and involving all of their teams in that design, it would delay it. You know what I mean? The story team was probably working on that. The environmental teams were probably working on that. So as we start looking at this transition into stuff like strike missions and things like that, and we've been talking about the post-game possibilities of End of Dragons, I really hope we do get to see them balancing this, because like you said, I think the initial release of Path of Fire, like post Path of Fire, was strong. The story was there. There were like the next living seasons. There were new and engaging maps that players of all skill levels could engage with. We had a raid wing that came not too long after, but it wasn't, again, I think it was a better balance overall. But I do think there were still longer term problems in their ongoing development that led to later on some weird gaps. So it's like, I really hope we see this fine tuning. And even if it does mean a shift to something like strike mission so that they're freeing up other teams to be working on other things, I think that would be great. But I think it will be really important to see what they do and how they communicate what players can expect from it.
Yeah. By the way, I would like to apologize. I muted myself to pour some Tic Tacs into my hand, but then I just realized that I had been muted when I muted myself, so I unmuted myself to pour some Tic Tacs in front of my mic into my hand.
Didn't hear the Tic Tac pouring.
Oh, really? Did it? So maybe I muted myself.
Sorry.
Okay, all right.
You're good. You're good.
If you
I
do
kind of
want-
wish we'd heard them now.
Yeah, if you want Tic Tac ASMR,
experience.
yeah, that is new content for Boats. A Tic Tac ASMR. We've got bad builds. Tic Tac ASMR. And it's like, yeah, okay, we'll do that. All right, so just some interesting factoids. And without looking, I'm going to give you a little bit of a guess. I'm going to give you a little bit of a chance to guess something here without looking on the wiki. Bear with me. So Heartthorn's release date was October 23rd, 2015. When do you think the next Living World story came out, which was season 3? Rough guess.
November 28th.
The same
27th.
year?
Yeah.
But Heart of Thorns.
Heart of Thorns. I think in Path of Fire. Heart of Thorns.
The next year?
You can't just all guess at the same time. Boots
Heart of
guess
Thorns
first.
March 12th.
No.
Right, Boots is March 12th. Kroof?
I remember the day. It was a school day, and I had gone on my phone waking up, and I saw the trailer for the teaser season 3. But so I'm gonna guess. No, it's not November. August, September 2016.
You mean the following year, September?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Okay, cool. Right, wow. Okay.
I think the gap was, or maybe it was a little
Wait,
less.
Boots, did you say 2015 or 2016?
Like, I don't think the release came out. I didn't think the Living World release came out before the Heart of Thorns got released.
Oh no, sorry, yeah, because you said March. My bad. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I thought you said later than that. Rick, you rolling your eyes at me?
No.
Rick's rolling her eyes.
Not, I swear.
How dare you not remember, Jebro?
I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna go maybe in the middle of that, and go for like July of the following year.
July was the following year.
$1, Jeb.
$1. My God.
$1. No, Kroof's getting $5 and 200. Sorry. It was July of the next year. So it was July 26th,
Okay.
and Heartthorns came out in October.
And Rook,
November,
the
December.
person who wasn't there at that time, got it right.
That's right.
Amazing.
I'm the
Was it
real
July?
Guild Wars 2 pro.
Yeah.
Right.
August,
Yeah,
September.
Rook-
I was
Rook
2
is
months
like-
off.
All right,
Rook
people.
is such an MMO aficionado that she's able to like glean it from just the
I
F
sense
ether.
it.
I think
I just sense it in the
also,
MMO ether.
but also that's probably quite bad. that Rook
it's
was
not good.
expected it to be like, that's not good. I mean, it's good that you got the guess right, but I think the expectation that it would be like that much later is like, well, yeah. I mean, but actually that's interesting because Rook came in after Heart of Thorns and has this expectation of maybe, unconscious or whatever, that things are delayed by or do come out quite a lot later than maybe the expectation of us who played pre Heart of Thorns, where it's like the time seems to be maybe a lot shorter, because that's 9 months. That's 9 months before a living. That is not 9 months of little bits in between. That's almost 9 months of
now
just
you're right. I remember
raids.
that now. So
That's
there was
nothing.
there was a content drought before Heart of Thorns. A long
And
content drought
after.
before Heart of Thorns, because they stopped the Living World production and then started working on the expansion. And then there was a huge content drought afterwards because they had to fix everything about the expansion. And then they finally got to Living World.
Well, I mean, I mean, maybe that was part of the fixing. I mean, so it was raids, and what else was there?
It was just raids. That was
Legendary armor, I guess, maybe, to start kicking.
No.
Legendary armor came out like after season 1 started.
They made a post. They made a post about Legendary armor in 2013.
They had to delay it.
And then
But actually, Rook did bring up a good point, and it kind of changed my viewpoint that like the raids in and of themselves felt almost like a half season, a mini season, because the raids for Wing 1 like directly connected to the next Living World season. So in a way, we were getting story, but it just wasn't the norm.
And why most people couldn't play it.
Yeah, it was like this fear of doing raids and like the high skill level concept that, and especially at the time, the balancing was totally different, so it was harder. But yeah, it did kind of push people away from experiencing this.
But they were doing stuff at the same time though. They did have
we had the PvP stuff.
The PvP tournaments, And,
it was big year. It was the big year. It was like I think Pro League was 2015 mostly.
Yeah, they had a tournament. They had a tournament at the Heart of Thorns release thing in PAX East.
That's when we were there, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Mate Boots there. Boots was on stage as well.
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah, because there
talking about myself really awkwardly.
Dude, oh man, it was so good though. That booth was amazing, and then at the same time, the booth was fantastic. And then same time around the corner, which is when they were doing Halo Championships as well. Oh my god!
Interestingly enough, though, as I was looking through all of this, so Path of Fire did have a faster pace because the expansion released September 22nd, 2017, and then Living Season 4 began November 28th. So about
damn, you ruined my whole guess thing. I was gonna get you all to guess again.
Ah, geez, I'm sorry, Jeb.
It's okay.
But I mean, I think it is really funny to me because there almost seems to be a flipped perception of it in the community. I feel like sometimes, where a lot of times we hear people talk about the fact that they feel as though, like, you know, the peak of the game was Heart of Thorns and all this stuff, and that's when, you know, like the future of the game was the strongest and best, and all of these kinds of conversations that you hear surrounding it. And then you actually look at Path of Fire and the fact that I do believe there was a direct response, and in many ways I think a tightening up of their production, like you were saying, Boots, where you were talking about the fact that the actual expansion itself and what it promised to deliver was like tightening your butt, like clenching your butt. Is that why you laughed? But I do think that there was a lot they took away from that. Path of Fire itself was more complete in its delivery. It required less adjustment. Although honestly, any game, and one of the luxuries of having I guess you could say, of having an MMO is that things do naturally get adjusted, fixed, and dealt with over time, right? That's just something that happens. Everything patches with lots of info, but I do think it was more streamlined. I would
say you're hitting a nail right now, because
stop that because of sound reasons.
In our 10 years of following this game, it's like pretty evident. Like there's like you could really see the evolving of ArenaNet in their production of the game. Like they were very ambitious in what they were trying to do at the beginning, right? They were trying to do live. They had plans to do live episodes every 2 weeks.
Yeah, they did one
at the release of the game. And at some point, they decided, rightly so, I think, that they're going to switch to more expansions instead. But that meant that they had to completely reorganize their structure, right?
Yeah.
And they did so. But they were, at that point, completely reorganized as an expansion structure, and they had to go back to making live stuff again.
Yeah.
And so over 10 years, they have just continuously be evolving in the way that they structure their teams to produce content. And I think only around Path of Fire did they start really like moving like a well-oiled machine. And now I think we're still in that phase, but there's still been some rut patches, right? Like they had to let go a lot of people at some point. So I think they still had to evolve at that point as well. But I think right now you're right. They're a lot better prepared to produce content than they were at the beginning.
I agree. And I think some of the experimentation that we've seen post Path of Fire, some of which is very good, and other parts of which I think fell flat a little bit, like DRMs in concept, I actually think are a great way to address exactly the problems that we've been talking about. Like, if we don't have what we would conceive of as new dungeons, if we don't have fractals, if we don't have whatever it is, like, how are we going to create repeatable ongoing content for a player base to engage with and get rewards from in a patch cycle? That's a question every MMO asks. So the experimentation becomes, what if we almost do dungeons, but they're not fractals, or they're not these other things, but we have this repeatable content. Now, do I think that those were successful overall? No. But again, it's like you can see them trying to grapple with these ideas of how they're going to scale and scope their content with all that experience that you were just talking about, Boots, in a way that's manageable for their teams, which are smaller inherently and tend to have a lot of overlap in the tasks they're doing, like the Living Season drought with the raids that we saw with Heart of Thorns, where now we're kind of going, well, can we move to strike missions? Can we make those really rewarding? Kind of like the single boss endgame raid wings of Final Fantasy XIV, where it's just 4 bosses that you get and you fight those, and they've got their normal modes and their savage modes. And that's the end game, right? So you can see them playing with this. And I mean, like you said, just really fast, I think there have been some weird lulls as they were gearing up and shifting into this expansion. But I have a lot of hope that with what I've seen and what I know about MMOs, it feels like they are starting to find what they want to do long term with a more steady release schedule.
Yeah,
that's my
I think you're right about strike missions. That I personally, I mean, I love the idea of raids, and I love raids in general. But I could see how creating raids is more dev intensive, is more production time intensive than this clever idea. It seems as though what they're going to be doing is repurposing story missions, bosses into strikes. So it's going to be probably a lot easier to do so, a lot less intensive for dev time.
It's very good, because like it's kind of what happens in Final Fantasy XIV, right? I mean, Rick's got the most experience. I've been playing more recently, but you have to do some of these massive like boss fights to like go through the story, and even raids and stuff. There's even alerts like saying, you know, this is the first time someone's done it in your party. Like I healed the vault dungeon the other day on my one of my healers, and I was like, oh wow, and they were like, oh, welcome to the game. It was so good. It was such a nice little thing. They were like, oh, you did so well, and they were like, they were pretty awesome, and I got through it, and I was like, there's this epic story towards the end. I was like, yeah, this is cool. But anyway, the idea of strikes, and again, we'll talk about that in a bit, because we're getting close to it, the post kind of End of Dragons stuff. But I feel like talking about like post, I guess, Hearthorn's Path of Fire, and we're talking about DRMs, the question that really came up into my head was, and this is going to be a podcast, I think, in itself, which is what Rook brought up, was just the sheer amount of different content there is in Guild Wars 2, which is good, but not good, because they never stick with it. Or they hardly do. Fractals is probably the most consistent endgame PvE we've had, and the last Fractal that came out was a while ago. So
Sunqua?
Yeah, and that was Sunqua Peak, and
which was a good one. But it's been way too long.
It's been way too long, and there's got to be reasons. There's got to be a question that's asked, and I think they're still answering that question now, and I think there will be post End of Dragons with strikes. What is Guild Wars 2 endgame content? Is it a mixture of all of these different things? Does it have to be one specific thing? Probably not. Can it be many things combining into one? Like, I think there's too much going on sometimes, and someone said refinement, which is what which is a really big word to use because that's exactly what they've not had with a lot of with their content. I'm not being mean or anything. I'm just trying to bring like, you know, critical conversation, which is important. And, you know, because it has been an issue. And then what happens after that refinement? Is there like, you know, additional stuff coming in? But thinking about Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, as Rook said, you know, Path of Fire was definitely like Living World Story came sooner afterwards. But then I feel like, and you know, there's a difference of opinion here, whether or not they were going to have another expansion was questionable, especially because of what they were doing with Icebrew Saga as well. Because it was like, oh, they're doing Icebrew Saga, they're not doing expansion. Oh no, they're not going to do an expansion. But then it was like, yeah, we're doing an expansion, and then what? So what are we doing? Are we doing Living World Story still and expansion? And then we had Mike Z, and then Mike Z left, director, and then we had, you know, Mo was still there. Step kind of was doing 2 positions at the same time. Then we had someone else, and now we've got Colin, and can't remember his name. Damn it. Awful. I'm a bad person.
Grouch?
No. Grouch is something else.
Doing live game.
There's more.
Yeah, there's someone else.
I can't see, this is bad. He's more silent partner, it feels like, but you know, they're still very much of a part. Like, there's 2 directors of the game basically, and you know, we're in this spot now where we've got this expansion coming, and in the past it's always been like, you know, the expansion's always hype. Like Path of Fire was very different to Heart of Thorns. The maps were different. You've got these different layers. There were different. Heart of Thorns is quite interesting because the maps are very like reminiscent of the content within the game. You know, Heart of Thorns delivered layers of content literally in the maps and literally in terms of raids, PvE overland, gliders, completely different way of traversing the areas, and you know, it brought us different stuff, whereas Path of Fire was a lot more flat, like literally, like with the whole thing, like literally in maps and literally with content. And it was like, and it's quite interesting, isn't it, in the way that you kind of think about it. Wow. It's just like, what is End of Dragons? I mean, you know, what are we going to be expecting from this? And I'm just going to quickly have a look through my fingers. I can actually ask the question. And chat as well, please, like, chime in on this, how you felt about post. Actually, let's get a little bit of a vote going down. Post Heart of Thorns, post Path of Fire. Which did you prefer? Just a quick little vote. I know it's very vast. But what did everyone here prefer? Like, what did everyone here prefer? I mean, I know obviously Rookie came in later, but you know, you can always say which content you preferred from which expansion, I guess, or which, you know, if you prefer DRMs over raids. Oh, sorry.
I think in my preference, it's a little unfortunate that Heart of Thorns released at a time when it wasn't super normal to be delaying expansions. I think Heart of Thorns should have been delayed considering so many bugs that they had to fix, and also do more betas, because it was such a massive content feat. But I think as an entire package, I preferred Heart of Thorns at the end of the day than I did Path of Fires, because I am someone who has been falling in love more with PvE content like raids and strike missions, and just having that sense of teamwork to overcome an obstacle. I think it's been a lot of fun recently. So I'm really resonating more so with Heart of Thorns.
Okay. Yeah. And who wants to go next, Boots or Rook? I get that.
I don't know if I have a preference.
You don't have to have a preference. That's okay.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I like them each for their own reasons.
Can you say why? Which ones?
I appreciated Heart of Thorns at the time because it really added an end game to Guild Wars 2, and
But when you say end game, do you mean end game for you specifically, or do you feel like for the community
in general? I think the community in general didn't feel like there was really an end game for Guild Wars 2 before Heart of Thorns came out.
Yeah,
there was fractals. I think that those were introduced early into the game before Heart of Thorns came out, but that's about it. And I think that Heart of Thorns turned that around. And it was very grindy. It was difficult, but I liked it, and I enjoyed raiding when it first came out too. Meanwhile, Path of Fire I mean, you just the mounts are so freaking good that like it kind of changes the game. And I enjoyed the content. I enjoyed the story more than I enjoyed the Heart of Thorns story. So I like them for different reasons.
John Taylor.
Is the other person?
JT.
Mm-hmm.
JT. Always remember JT.
Oh,
Good old JT.
I was like, no, Jebro, it's Rook.
No.
Not rebrand to John Taylor.
I just wanted to get the name out just in case they're listening, because I know a lot of devs do listen to the podcast, and I don't want John Taylor to be like, oh, they forgot me. We didn't forget you. You're very much remembered. But the name...
He said that he likes his privacy, so maybe we should.
Oh, yeah, we're just respecting
He's definitely
JT's
more
privacy.
chill.
Yeah.
He's more chill.
And when you put the podcast out on Spotify or whatever, bleep out the name because he wants his privacy.
I'll just bleep
Yeah.
out that. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It's funny because...
to
Yeah, we'll remind you. It's funny because I think I feel the same as Boots. You actually took the words from me there.
End of the podcast. So that's it. Season 1 done.
That's it. Done. Boots and I agree. We aligned.
Actually agreed. Wow.
No, I mean, I'm vibing with pretty much everything you've said today, Boots. But I do agree. I think that post Heart of Thorns, I love raids. I actually think the raids in Guild Wars 2 also, although I was not there to play them when they were tuned originally. So that's really key. And from what I'm hearing from everybody, they are much less accessible at that point. But I think at this point, the raids themselves are great for a wide experience range. I think there's so much you can do and enjoy in them and still get a lot of the story. I really do think that I really love them. I think they're fantastic content. I love the storytelling in them. I like the creative ways they answer questions. I just, in the last couple weeks, started progging, the 2 Jin fight at the end. Is it Kadim? Kadim. And that fight in and of itself is such an excellent beacon to me of how you can envision with the unique mechanics and the unique questions of Guild Wars 2 and its own combat mentality and everything, and the jumping and the there's so much stuff, the CC, there's so many things in there that I think show uniquely what this kind of encounter could be like in a Guild Wars 2 setting. It doesn't have to be like raids everywhere else. So I loved that. And I actually do think a lot of the story following Heart of Thorns is really fun. We get into a lot of the Aurene stuff, which is my favorite, in case anybody didn't know or I hadn't made that clear before.
No, this is actually called the Rook Loves Aurene podcast.
Yes, it is. So I was really excited about that because I felt like the story really finally started to pick up. However, I think overall, the Path of Fire post, content, story, everything, it felt much more engaging to me in the sense that when you actually look at the story of Heart of Thorns itself that they were coming off of, it's pretty short. There's a lot of good stuff, but the vast majority of actually getting the experience of Heart of Thorns is going through all the maps, doing the metas, doing all the different events, doing all the layers, dealing with all the different factions. The actual just playable story content in and of itself from Heart of Thorns is surprisingly small. It's very short. So Path of Fire overall felt stronger to me as a complete narrative package, just in the sense of without having to go do a whole bunch of other things and do all this other stuff. I felt like the cinematic, engaging narrative of Path of Fire was more complete and robust, which then in turn, leading into Path of Fire Living Season 4, gave me some of my absolute high points in the narrative of the game. Of course, then we had some other bumpy bits and pieces with Icebird Saga and stuff like that. But overall, I like both of them for different reasons. And I've been really encouraged to see that they've been talking a lot about combining both of their experiences from either expansion into End of Dragons, because that's where I think they can hit goal.
Yeah, it was Season 4 was playing back through it was very good. Actually, I really did. There was something going on there that I don't know. I'm playing through that, and that's one thing. Playing back through that, and I really want to go back and play through Half Ones. I think again because I've forgotten a lot of the intricate details because it was so long ago. It was 6 years ago.
Just watch Kroof's video.
What the shorts?
Aren't you making a video about the Heart of Thorns story?
Oh, that's been out for a month.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. Watch Kroof's video.
It's out.
It's a bit of a critique, re-storytelling of it. It's a lot of fun.
We'll link it in the chat. You're subbed. You can link it in the chat if you want. Okay. Yes. Rook. Good points. I think Yeah, and what Boots said about the mounts, they're so important. They're such an important intrinsic part of the game that is everyone just gets excited about. The funny thing is I had this question last night in chat. Someone came in, we had because literally my title for Guild Wars 2 is like new ? If you have a question, ask away, and it really just brings people in.
And you never answer them. Wow.
I couldn't answer this
advertising.
question. I couldn't answer this question last night that I had. It was like, what is the end game in Guild Wars 2?
Oh, I love.
And I was
question.
like,
there's an answer.
There's a lot of answers.
No,
that's
there's
the
only
problem.
one answer.
It's
in my
wardrobe.
opinion.
It's probably fashion.
In my objective, no, it's not even fashion. In my objective opinion, the only end game is open world meta maps. That is the only end game that Guild Wars 2 offers. It is the only consistent end game.
Oh, right,
that Guild Wars 2
right.
offers.
That everyone has access to?
That everyone can do. That is very, very clear.
What about fashion?
That has fashion with it. That has skins that you can acquire. That has sometimes mastery tracks surrounding it. That, in my opinion, we always talk about like there's no consistent end game. I have, for a time now, viewed the open world experience as the only end game, which is why I have been very critical of a lot of the mastery tracks in Icebrood Saga, because I view the open world as like my only sense of fun. And when I really disagree with a lot of the mastery tracks.
Kroof does have fun in other areas of the game.
I do have other. Yeah, I love fun. I love me some fun.
You love fun.
But in the case of open world, the masteries, they made it too easy to where it was taking away something that I felt was the only subtle challenge. Even though open world isn't really challenging, it made it even easier and easier to the point where people might not view it as endgame, but like when Tequatl was redone and the old meta events.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and the old meta events for Heart of Thorns. Yeah, there was a sense of challenge that brought people together for a PvE aspect. Okay. So I would put my money on meta events being the consistent end game.
I mean, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? And I guess maybe post Heart of Thorns and post Path of Fire, you'd think you'd start to get a little bit more of an idea of what that answer to that question could be, maybe for people. But also, is it good that maybe there isn't an answer to that question and you can just make it what you want it to be? I mean, that's a fair point, I think, as well. But you want to answer.
I feel like there is an answer, but the answer is just list a bunch of different things, right?
Yeah, of course. Exactly, yeah, because it's different for everyone.
But and one thing that is still really important is that the raids, while I agree, Kroof, they're in this really weird area, because can you actually say that there is like a raid schedule in the sense of like a timed end game cycle that we would imagine that's introducing new things, and that, again, here's the thing, we have World's First this day, we have these things, we've got 3 months of prod, we've got the next tier of gear, we've got whatever it is. No, there's not that. However, it is interesting because unlike other games, Guild Wars 2's refusal to do a constant ongoing gear grind. Well,
the gear grind. I thought you were going to say like consistent ending.
No.
That's really harsh, Rook.
Never mind. Retract that.
Refuses to do gear grinding. And the fact that gear difficulty, like the tuning of difficulty to gear, is always and will always be set to our Ascended and Legendary, right? Mm-hmm. Those raid wings are not obsolete. So technically, you can at any point still get into raiding and consider raiding to be a form of endgame. But however, is there a new ongoing cycle for it? No. Which is a really good point. I mean, legendaries, I oftentimes talk about as an endgame because, again, I think endgame, we shoehorn it a lot of times in the MMO community as being specific to high mechanical difficulty things, right? But endgame really can be anything that I think is either an investment of time, energy, or skill post-expansion. So I do think that legendaries in and of themselves are also a form of endgame because of the sheer amount of time, resources, and energy that you have to put into them. But I would agree with you on this. I actually do think that metas are some of the only large-scale content we have that very much regularly comes out, and that does involve a repeatable, ongoing effort made by many people. You know what I mean? And I never really thought about that specifically, and but I think you are right.
It's the only one. It's the only MMORPG that I can think that does it well.
Oh, and they do it very.
I love metas.
Like, who does meta events? I mean, I guess ESO has world bosses, but they're not events. They're not dynamic. They spawn and they die. They're called world events, but they're really not. They're in like their grand scale. They're fun and they're cool, but they're simple and they're very based in an area and they're, one area, and they look good and the animations are great, but they're not difficult and they're not everlasting, which is, I think Drizzlewood is one of the most epic metas. I think, even I'm talking about like the more recent ones, I think is so good, so different to what they did. Like, they've really changed a lot of what they do. And like, when I was replaying, like, that's probably one of the most consistent places I was in for when you complete that revisit to the story and you have to go and do legendary to get the legendary amulet, which I think was just an absolute, it was a home run. That whole thing was amazing. Like, I hope whoever came up with that idea just got catapulted to the top and higher echelons of ArenaNet, because it was so good and it is there forever. For as long as the game is around, it is there, and they need to do more stuff like that. Let us play the old seasons. Give us like a legendary kneecap. I don't know, whatever. I don't know why I said kneecap.
You seem to have a real thing about knees.
Yeah, I've got an only knees as well. There's a new thing I'm working on.
Maybe it's a desire
I've got
for
to come on
youth.
for it. It is a desire for you.
And needing better knees.
But I've got bad knees. And I don't know. It's just I've completely lost the plot. The meta's great, basically.
Just like Ice Cream Saga.
But we can. Oh god. I actually like parts of Ice Cream Saga, but there is some pretty good moments.
That's a whole other podcast. We already did one talking about it.
I like how like hedgy that statement was, Jebro. I actually like parts of Ice Cream Saga.
Yeah, because like, no, I'm not saying you all disliked it, but like there was many people who just downright hated it, and I was just like,
but it lost the plot. I think we can all agree it lost the plot.
I think it just didn't. Oh, again, it's a whole other discussion.
That's an
right?
English phrase as well. That's the thing. I'm just like, there's lost the plot, like the literal plot, and then it's like, I've lost the plot. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, that was pretty good.
It felt like the saga, right? Not a living season, a saga that could have been the length, duration, and robustness of an expansion, and I think it needed it.
Yeah.
I think there are real high points in it. I think there are a lot of things they did that were incredibly good, bits and pieces and things that I really loved. But it is really unfortunate because in and of itself, I think the story is there. It's just that we straight up did not have the full scope of what we needed to connect every dot and make it actually a really strong, cohesive narrative experience. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a lot of really good things.
Question, Rook, like, do you think that the Icebreed Saga could have been an expansion?
Yes, that's what I was just saying. Yeah.
Do you think it was meant to be an expansion?
No, they didn't meant it to be an expansion because they specifically said they were gonna make a season.
No, but like obviously they wouldn't have told us. But like I'm saying, in the original idea, maybe that's what the idea was. Maybe it could have been an idea for it.
I think they were. I think initially they were trying to do like a live expansion situation where they implement high quality story with high quality features. Because like the start of Icebreed Saga is some of the best storytelling content I have seen in a long time. The cutscenes were immaculate. They weren't hiding away from cutscenes, which they were doing.
It was a good cutscenes.
Like I think cutscenes have such a great potential in storytelling. So I love that they did that. It was long. It was lengthy. There felt like there was meat to it.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it.
Yep.
Why did you start laughing, Kroof? Is it the meat comment?
Kroof loved the meat.
You
and
loved
how
the meat.
meaty it was. Yeah.
Who's meat in the specifically Icebreed Saga? I mean, there was definitely some meaty characters in there. Meaty,
There's
so much
very meaty
to them.
characters.
So much to them.
Beefy characters. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the Patreon content later after Kroof has stopped crying.
I'm so sorry.
Wait, your makeup's gone.
I realized I was on the internet and I was like, oh, I'm stringing these words together, but I had to keep going. Anyway,
good.
I'm sorry.
Boots, I think you were trying to say something. I may have interrupted. Sorry.
I think I was going to say something like only Brams.
Oh god, I'm not sure that would go down too well.
No.
Maybe for hate mail or something. I don't know. I'm not too sure.
I mean, we've talked about it before. I do think there's a lot to be said either way about whether or not, a lot to be argued for either point. Were they going into Icebird Saga believing that from here on out sagas would be something more like expansions? I can absolutely see evidence for it. On the other hand, do I think that large scale, and I mean, I've said it before, I'll just keep saying it, but do I think that large scale, it made sense for them to continue with expansions? Do I think that the saga word could have just been them literally like rebranding Living Seasons, since Living Seasons aren't living anymore? You know what I mean? It's like, I think there's a lot of things that could have been, and that, either way, there are very valid critiques to be made about the overall division and pacing of Icebird Saga. But I agree in that the start of it was incredibly strong. And again, it gives me more hope for what they've been pouring all of their time and energy into with End of Dragons, because I really do truly, firmly believe, that we have a team that is capable and has been showing more and more and more that, especially those narrative things like the cutscenes and all this kind of stuff that you were talking about, Kroof, they have learned how to do this so well. They've been refining so many things. If they can just get all of their energies into the thing, fully realizing it on the scale they want to realize it, I think it's going to be phenomenal. So it is really instructive and interesting to have these conversations about the previous seasons and the pacing and the future, which we've been talking about on and off periodically, but particularly in this conversation. What are our hopes, expectations? What do we need going into End of Dragons? I think that it is important that we see those areas that shine continue to shine and just get bigger, and other areas to become more reliable and dependent, and the consistent quality throughout, because the team can deliver it. It's just, is it all going to come in one big package? Are we going to get it? And how's the experience going to be, you know?
Can I ask a question, Rook? Do you believe in love after love?
What?
It was just you were starting to sing. See, that was it was in my head when you were doing the I believe and you were doing that, and I was like, oh, that share just like needs to be inserted
Remember,
into
kids,
this
sharing
podcast.
is caring.
It is. Share's awesome. Obviously. Let me just go into what I was going to... Right, yes, Rook, very, very important points. Brung brought up a very important point, which is, I just wrote it down on our little document, Living World ? Which we can bring back into the End of Dragons conversation, which we can start moving on to. Interesting fact from the chat. Thank you very much for putting that vote together as well. 9-9. I know it wasn't 64 people voting, so you suck. But
Wow, no flaming chat.
Come on, chat, get sorted. I'm joking. I love your faces. You're just listening. You know, you're doing your heavy lifting, you're drilling. You know, whatever you're doing in the background, you're listening to this amazing podcast on headphones. And you're like, damn, I just couldn't get over to vote. I'm sorry, but it was equal. Post Heartthorns, post Path for Fire, both equal. So maybe that's, you know, representative of the community. We'll have to wait and see. There won't be a vote for everyone, but that was the only one. But what we're going to do is, and I don't think we need to talk about them anymore, because I think we talked about it quite a lot. Post End of Dragons. So think about all the things that Guild Wars 2 encompasses when you think about post content. You think about the dates and the amount of time that it took to release a living story afterwards. So we're talking average. It could be... Now, Heartthorns was quicker. Actually, no, which one was quicker? No, Path of Fire is quicker. So, as Rook said earlier, November 28th, after the release of Path of Fire. Same year. So it wasn't that long, September. So September, October, November. So like 2-3 months. That's pretty good. Think about that. Think about Heartthorns, 9 months. So you're talking about you maybe in between. I don't know. It's going to be a half a year, which is, you know, which feels mega bad, man. I never say that, but like that does feel bad. Think about Living World. Think about also alliances for World v World. Think about what a saga is. Would a saga be complementary to a Living World? Will a Living World exist? Just putting in the questions to chat, putting questions to our guests as well. PvP balance. for PvP, World v World, PvE, which we know is something they're going to be changing. Different changes in the game completely. Steam. We're talking about metas. We're talking about world bosses. We're talking about, a lot of people started to talk about reward updates, updating chests and stuff. I think that's something Boots has talked about previously. Thinking about this whole acquiring this legendary amulet. Is that something that should be brought into the game in the future as well? What should they be doing now as well to prepare us for the future after? Should they be doing anything preparing us for the future after End of Dragons? I know a couple of MMORPGs always give us the idea that forever that stuff is continuing. Elder Scrolls Online, for example, we know every January we're getting a massive release of information about the coming year. You know what's going to happen. I would argue that it's too structured, but you still know every January, like January 27th, for example, ESO, we know is the next big story beat for like ESO. We know it's going to be different. We know there's DLCs, we know there's dungeons, we know there's story, we know there's loads of stuff. With End of Dragons, how quickly would you like to see, starting off with new content coming into the game, and what would you like that content to be? Anyone can jump in with this, because I don't want, this is a big loaded question.
Yeah, this is a lot. There's a lot to get into. Okay, I'd say 3 months. I would like to see, depending. I mean, they are talking about we don't have a lot of information as to how large this expansion is going to be. However, they have mentioned things like 5 acts, which would be the longest expansion if each act has like a normal amount of chapters to it. So I hope that with the End of Dragons, considering they're concluding the whole narrative of the dragons, I hope that not only the narrative is one of the grandest we've ever seen, but that the meta events and how they've been talking about the meta events will be on par to Heart of Thorns. And I think that would give the expansion a lot of innate replayability. And so I think 3, maybe even 4 months, if there is a lot of content, we'll have to see. But I think 3 months is always a good moment to hit. Maybe start introducing another, maybe Living World, because strike missions, they are said to be connected to the story. However, I wouldn't be mad at just seeing random strike missions pop up as, substitute for Endgame. They kind of did it with Icebrood Saga when they launched an episode and then we got 3 strike missions that weren't even connected to story. So that's definitely a possibility. But of course, Living World. What will the next Living World be? I hope it is called something different than Living World. I like what they did with Icebrood Saga. They gave it its own statement title. So I think a lot of us are just wondering where they're going to go after the dragons. And I think Living World is going to be a good answer to that.
Do you think is Living World? I mean, this is the thing. End of Dragons can be a way of them stamping their own way on the game of saying end of a lot of stuff and beginning of new stuff. Like it completely changed. I mean, end is a pretty. I still think the title of the expansion is quite loaded for a lot of people. I think it sends a very unconscious message, which isn't necessary. But you could also look on the other side of new. With an end, it becomes a new. It's a kind of an old proverb, I guess, but like many people have always said, with every end becomes a new, and that's quite cool as well to think about. Which is something they could have put.
Tree. I want to be eaten by some mushrooms.
That's Kroof's personal dream.
I don't know the relevance of that, but cool.
When death brings new life, it's the circle of life.
Oh, I thought you said you want to be eaten by mushrooms.
Well, yeah, fungi.
Oh,
anyway.
Okay.
Eaten by a fun guy.
I mean, Kroof's a fun guy. A lot of things have happened today.
Oh dear! Oh my! That was really good. That one was up there for me today.
That was witty. That was good. Good job.
Why do you guys sound so surprised?
Well, because
Do you want an honest answer, or do you want to
great,
lie?
because then you can lie on.
I can lie. I mean, I don't mind.
And there is an opportunity to break the mold of what we currently know. However, I do think the living world as a concept. I'm really trying to bring it back on track.
I'm sorry.
You gotta stop thinking about it, Jebro. Stop thinking about it.
I think living world as a title for a system and something that the community is very used to. I think we won't really get rid of the living world system as a whole.
Cool.
But I don't know development plans of how quickly we're gonna get that. We might see a break. I mean, like what? I'm more excited to actually see post End of Dragons.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it's such like an open frontier that like we kind of know what we're gonna do, like dragon magic, all that stuff. We got that. It's been in the wheelhouse of Guild Wars 2. But post, I'm like, I really want to get there. I want to just like be cryogenically frozen and then bam, just 7 months later. Like what's happening?
Since we're going to space, they're going to rebrand it to Living Universe.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be fine with that. That's cool. I think that you're on the mark, Kroof. It feels like we talked about earlier, right? I think that there are cycles of kind of the momentum and impetus with MMOs, and nailing down exactly what that is with the kind of content that you have in your MMO is something that every single game has to kind of grapple with and figure out. So a 3-month sort of break into what we might get with the next saga, or however they want to name it, which I agree. I think actually keeping with that would be great. Having that iconic name of a thing makes it feel more like, in and of itself, I always call them episodic mini expansions because that's kind of how I feel about it. And I personally do really love that mix in Guild Wars 2. I like that we get a big expansion and then we get these episodic sort of, you can bite into it more than you can like patch cycles in other games, but it's not purely all episodic like we kind of see sort of in ESO. ESO is really interesting the way it structures things, but it's very much like a subversion of how many other MMOs do it, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I like having both because I do think that it gives a little breathing room to have more engagement and more stuff, but the pacing of it, and then like we talked about earlier, the key really being the content that comes with it is going to be so indicative of the future of Guild Wars 2. If we have 3 months and they've been putting all this groundwork in, and I've seen in chat people asking, when are we going to get a new world versus world map? When are we going to get this thing, right? They are clearly right now revamping and finessing and making much needed improvements in certain areas, alliance system, all these other traits. And I'm hoping that what we see as we get into post End of Dragons is a great union of the scheduling of all of this. How do we have the momentum of a new story pushing us forward, a new future, and then also within that, after a lot of these base systems have been tweaked, reworked, they have an idea of where they want to move in the future and how they can build on it, then what can we expect? Will we get, and they broke away with Iceberg Saga on this, which I think is great. If you don't have to deliver a map with every episode, what can you deliver instead? Can we add regularly? Oh yes, every 6 months we'll have a new set of strikes, and then in between that will be PvP or world versus world. Can we see a schedule that again gives people a bit of an idea of the cycle of their experience mechanically alongside the story that they're getting?
Do you mean like a roadmap for the future? Do we think that a roadmap now, before the even expansion comes out?
No, I think we could wait till the expansion comes out, but I would like to get a roadmap soon after the expansion comes out.
Because they've been doing roadmaps so well. I really hope that they carry on post End of Dragons.
So we want to see a
roadmap.
I don't see.
Not right now.
I think everybody likes roadmaps, right?
Yeah, it's good to see what you can have on the docket coming up.
I mean, like I said with ESO earlier, like always having a solid structure. Some people don't like that. It's just a question. Yeah. I love the roadmap. The roadmap started to come out.
The only time I've ever seen any kind of response to a roadmap that was negative was like the one time they gave a roadmap and it wasn't accurately followed once. And
I think that was PvP.
Yeah.
That might have been PvP actually.
Or maybe like world restructuring because there was like a bug delay. I might have.
Oh yeah. There's that. There's like, well, they didn't even actually give a roadmap for that. They just said we're working on this. Might come soon. Might come later.
Roadmap.
There was no roadmap for the World vs. World alliances.
No, but I think they had mentioned like the beta test, like when they were going to do it on the day, and then they had to.
Oh yeah, well that was that was a bug.
You have to give enough information so that players know that the parts of your game that resonate with them, they can expect them and they will continue to have an investment returned in those facets, right?
Yeah.
But I agree, Jeb, because I have seen with ESO, I love ESO, but there are times where they like literally will tell you, they'll like release a breakdown of their cash shop and like every item that's going to release on what day, or like, you know, this season. It's like these minute little details about like this exact thing and this exact story beat, and then one more dungeon and then this thing and then that thing. And on one hand, it's great because people very much know what to expect in that regard. But sometimes I think it's like, you don't have to go that far. You just have to give people an idea that, like, again, they're not left with huge gaping question marks in certain areas that might be of very specific interest to them. Or they just have an idea of what to expect from what's coming. You know,
a good roadmap has the highlights on the road, not the location of every Motel 6. Yeah.
Never stayed in Motel 6. Are they good?
So if you asked me, what was the original question, Jebro, that you asked everybody?
So often.
Post End of Dragons, like, what would you like to kind of see? I mean, the question was so open that it's going to lead us to the discussion for the rest of the stream. But it's more of like the original question I think was, how soon after End of Dragons do you want to see new content? Because I went from the kind of 3 months for Path of Fire to the 9 months of Heart of Thorns, and what kind of content? Like, do you feel like Live and World, Saga? Do we feel like another expansion? Okay. Like, I mean, obviously that's not going to happen.
So it's releasing end of February, right? I could see giving a grace period of like all of March to play it, and then we're for sure having April 1st. We're getting the Super Adventure Box, right? First new bit of content. World 3 Super Adventure Box. Right there, we got it in game, and then I think so. I think World vs. World alliances will probably be introduced into the game within 2 months of End of Dragons coming. But you give me that face. I'm saying it'll be introduced within 2 months probably, but World vs. World seasons a few months after that. He asked what I want.
Yeah, what he wants.
You're
what
right.
He wants.
You're
they
right.
can't have
You're
like
right.
you can't.
Okay, well then I'll just say I want Tengu. I'll just be like Tengu.
Yeah, you can if you want to say that. You can say that, but like, you know, maybe within the realms of possibility. And I think the realms of possibility, 2 months isn't ridiculous because, and I will say this, they originally planned for the expansion to have come out earlier, like last year. So it means maybe, and we don't know this, and I know we've got some people in chat from Mainnet, Nick Hernandez, hello. But there may have been work already done in advance, which maybe means some parts of production further down the line may have been pushed up a little bit with other work that's not been done, or it may have been it's just everything's delayed and it's going to be further down the line. We don't know a lot of their work processes. Sometimes they do give us a lot of information about a lot of things, but they don't give us that I guess, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like the information we want, like how long does it literally take to do this? Like when's the next thing definitely? Do you know what I mean? Like we're never going to know. And that's good. I don't mind that. But I think 2 months, 2 months is, 2
months is a decent amount of time.
I mean,
they're already doing the betas.
I mean, well, but that's another thing as well. And we've had betas for more stuff, alliances, and I think the future of this game is something that may be worth thinking about as well, which I forgot to add. I've got a list of stuff to think about. So we're also thinking about Steam. Steam could be post 2 months. I think that would be a really good spot. You know, we've got Living Well, we're talking about everything else, but we can talk about so much stuff. We can talk about wardrobe. We can talk about dying system. We can talk about revamping old content, bringing content into the old maps. And if you're revamping stuff like strikes, for example.
So I was going to say strikes, I think they could probably come out with the first strike mission, a month after the expansion drops. Not even. They probably have one ready already.
Well, the strike missions, I think the way that they had...
Like
I think the way that they have, well, I wish they would show us more strike missions.
I thought they showed us one snippet though, didn't they?
No,
like
they just showed us the arenas. They just showed us supposedly the arenas, or something that looked like arenas. But I think strike missions are coming with End of Dragons, but the challenge modes will be activated after. So
No,
maybe
yes.
a month.
Yeah.
It said both of them are releasing with the expansion,
great.
normal mode and challenge mode. For
There you
the
go.
for the bosses that are
Did they say
in
for the expansion?
For the what
bosses
I
that are in the
heard,
story of the
I
expansion.
took note. The bosses that are in the story in the expansion are
Will you
releasing with
only-
challenge mode.
Yeah, they're
Will
really.
you only be able to play
I thought
them-
the challenge mode would be coming later.
No, I swear Ruby specifically said on one they are releasing together.
Okay.
What are we
great.
swearing
And that
on?
was like- I will go back.
We're
and
gonna need
find
it. We're gonna need some Nancy Drew.
But
I
if
need-
that's
I need
true,
some
okay, so if that's true, how are
investigation.
they gonna deal with it? Like, are they going to make it so you could only play the strike missions once you've completed that story step, or are there going to be spoilers basically in
Hope
these strike
so.
missions?
Swear on a quaggan, really
Brim
good.
says they're releasing 1 month after End of Dragons.
Oh, so my guess was correct.
The challenge modes, just not the.
Oh,
you'll be able
never
to play
mind.
this-
My guess was wrong.
But maybe the strike will be. Well, the thing is that I think they talk. I mean, sometimes I'm not sure what's happening because I think sometimes it's nice to have. They do have a blog post afterwards, but I think sometimes the way they deliver those posts are so long-winded. Like they could just give us like, this is coming out, boom. And like just give us some information. Sometimes definite things that are coming, like feature list, maybe a little bit more definitive information. But I really do like those detailed blog posts when they talk about like design and tech and stuff like that. I do like that. I do like the posts. But
I think they should
Well,
do
I
like
think
a
those-
TikTok where it's like they do like a bullet point and then a bullet point and like comes out
Bullet
next
points
month.
I think are great. And
Yeah.
and this was I saw even Nick mentioned in chat, like how would you delineate this? Should we just say that something is coming in 3 months, or would it be something where we say a strike mission is coming in 3 months? And I think for me, the big thing is that the pillars of content types and the expectation of when roughly they are coming in the game cycle is something that's really important to communicate. So, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously here, with all the information, right, challenge modes and things like that, if they're coming a month after, that in and of itself, right off the bat, is a bit of challenging PvE content that's coming.
yeah.
But the idea less so that I think you have to constantly do a hyper detailed blog post about things like this is the strike and how we designed it and all the things. I love that, but I usually love that as a follow-up. Just looking at like an advanced schedule, what I'm looking for mostly is just, what is the tempo, the pacing of release I can expect for X content type. So for me, I mean, like we were saying, if I know 1 month after challenge modes are coming out, and then 3 months after that, we're going to have a new raid wing. It doesn't have to be all the details about the thing. It just hitting the points of that type of content
that's
and
a
the
roadmap,
pacing it's going
right?
to be released.
That's a
That's in the
roadmap,
roadmap.
then.
Now, now that you speak about it that way, I think probably what we could expect without them having to say it is challenge modes. Strike missions to be released, obviously with the story when it comes out. Challenge mode coming 1 month after. But then I think probably we could expect a strike mission to come with each new Living World episode based on an instance in the story of that Living World episode. And then maybe a challenge mode for that a little bit later, or released at the same time. So if all the new strike missions are going to be based on story steps, I think that's very possible.
I'm excited for this whole. Pardon me. Should I tell you what the thing I like about the strikes ideas and about the post content, which I think can make their flow better. Now, workflow is something that's spoken about more so in America than I think I've ever heard it in my life. And workflow is like a big thing, like people designing workflows, right? And we all have our different ways of working. That is a workflow. I do A, B, C, D. Here is F, whatever. And I'll skip a letter, apparently.
F, U, W, B.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place.
Same. But like, this kind of workflow where you've got content that's designed for a story, and then you adapt that story and you change the instance into a challenging fight, which more people can engage in together, and adapt that content into another way that people can enjoy it, is smart. One, you don't have to design a crap load of extra stuff that takes time. That means, if we dedicate X amount of devs to this, we think about how much they get paid, and then we think about how many people play that content, how much they spend. Is it worth the money? It's already worth the money because they've already put it in the expansion, they've already paid for it. they're getting bonus stuff. You know, it's just like, it's awesome. Because another reason why I think this is so great, if you think about one of the most successful parts of the game ever, they actually used a lot of old assets in the game that already existed as part of this telling the story, and that's Scarlet. They used a lot of old maps. They used a lot of old areas that they adapted and changed. Lion's Arch, they destroyed Lion's Arch. Okay, we all may have different feelings about how the new Lion's Arch got constructed and the way it looks now, but I feel like that was one of the best parts of the game, and that's when they used old content and adapted it. But this content is obviously going to be new for End of Dragons, but when they release stuff down the line and they bring in strike bosses, it will be older content that they adapt. And I think that's where they've really made some big strides. Obviously, we want new areas. Obviously, we want new stuff. But I feel like they can put a good mix together of the two and just, one, save time, release stuff quicker, and then also at the same time have those teams rotating to bring us new stuff and new features, obviously, that we like as well. It's just a personal kind of thought, I guess.
Can we try to do, okay, so based on your prompt, Jebro, and then based on Rook's idea of giving information about the pillars of content, can we try to do a quick rundown of each pillar of content and what we want to see post End of Dragon for that pillar of content? So
it's on the list, mate. It's in the document. That's exactly what we're doing.
There's a document.
Well done.
You just outed yourself for not reading the document.
You did not read the document. It's in there. We literally got everything.
To be fair,
wow.
for this podcast, Jebro said you don't have to look at it if you don't want to.
I did. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
True.
I'm just glad that people are on the same wavelength.
Let's do it then. Okay,
I love it. Let's do it.
For PvE, we've got Living World. I think, are we all agreed that probably Living World's coming back?
Yes, I think maybe with a new name, maybe
no. Immediately new expansion.
Immediately new expansion.
Well, that's what I said
every
earlier.
4 months.
Let's just go. I mean, that would be cool. But like, I
every
think
2 weeks, new expansion.
It will be.
Oh my god!
It
just
will be
money,
something.
Money, honey.
Yes.
And then strike missions possibly released with each new Living World episode would be cool. And then fractals
don't forget they could do past bosses. They could do past bosses in the story. They could bring Balthazar. Yeah. They could do a strike mission. They could do they could do Mordremoth. They could do Thingy of Mordremoth. They could do loads of. Think of any boss fight you've done in the game. They can do a strike of it. They possibly could do a strike of it.
Yeah, they could. They could.
They could do strike bosses for old Guild Wars bosses
and
as well.
Additionally, there is the scrying pool, which gives you a lore reason to do that.
That's right.
So if there ever is a drought, and that's a possibility in the interim.
Who's your favorite boss? Who's your favorite boss in Guild Wars?
Balthazar challenge mode with 10 people. That would be, yes.
Exactly.
Or Migraine. I mean, Mordremoth already has a challenge mode. Just do Migraine strike mission.
Is there anything else we want PvE-wise besides what we just said?
I mean, we mentioned metas earlier, but we know that we pretty much expect those. So something with that kind of content, open world meta content. I think I personally love fractals. I mean, I'll be honest. I think that they have the scaling system in place for that. There's great rewards for it. I think it's one of the most convenient pieces of content in the game to be able to queue into and do with a wide range of people. I really love the fractal system. So I would love, especially if they are shifting something like raids into more of a strike mission focus, I would love to see fractals still get supported and come out at some point. But again, if we know there's going to be other stuff in that category, that's fine.
I think it was Nike do an idea that it might be worth a different discussion about doing fractal seasons where people race to get as far along in the fractal levels as possible. And as quickly as possible. So that's an interesting idea. But yeah, I don't know if that's ever coming.
I want that to be PvE level rush. Every character gets reset to level 1. that would be
obviously. But I think for our community, you'd probably have to have an opt-in or an opt-out kind of deal.
It's a Black Desert Online thing. Black Desert Online has that. Seasons.
It would just be.
It's like PoF Exile.
Mandatory.
But that actually exists, Kroof.
Well, not in Guild Wars 2.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But like in PoF Exile, Black Desert Online, as an MMORPG, they have season servers. where you can get
But
rewards and stuff. It's pretty cool.
The comment on the fractal seasons is actually really interesting. I had not thought about that.
So besides so that's PvE. Do we want to talk about specific story things?
We could be here for 4 hours.
Yeah, we could be here for a very long time.
I mean,
so what other pillars are there?
Well, the main pillars are obviously living world. Not living world. There's PvE, world v world. World v world.
Let's talk about world v world. Is it finally time?
You wanted to talk about it. I'm gonna be 2 seconds. Keep talking about it. Introduce what you would like to see from world v world. I've got my headphones on still. I'm just going over there.
Boots.
I would like seasons to come back.
A classical definition of what world versus world is, and then explain history, and then go into your recommendations. Now, what do you
world versus world? Webster's dictionary defines world versus world. No, So I want seasons to come back. Seasons were around. Or was seasons still going on in Heart of Thorns time? Do you remember?
I'm only gonna start playing World vs. World as alliances come out. I never really touched World vs. World.
I feel like they weren't around at that point. Anyway, seasons were back in the earlier days of World vs. World before mega servers. And it was originally World vs. World was server versus server versus server. With mega servers, things tended to get weirdly distributed a little bit, and people didn't really feel like the same kind of rah my server anymore, because everybody was able to play together, and the seasons disappeared because the linking of worlds kind of made it not make any sense anymore. But with alliances, if people start getting really into alliances and really into your guild, supporting your guild, supporting your alliance, it's my team versus your team again, seasons could come back. And seasons were a period of time, I think they lasted a couple of months, where all of the servers, or in this case it's going to be all of the alliances, get ranked up against each other, and then like go up or down in ranking, and then get rewards based on your rank, because of the World versus World matches you've done. And it made World versus World very, very, very exciting, and very intense.
It was 2 months. It was about 2 months. I just looked at the dates, and it was 2000. Wow, it was 2013.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
It was a year after release. That was when I was heavy. I was heavy into that. I actually quit World v World pretty hard after that.
It definitely made
it crushed
I know
it did.
some commanders on some servers would not stop playing for like days and days straight. And I think some people lost their jobs. Some people,
as they should,
died.
No, don't listen to Kroof.
A lot of people. No one died. People. Jesus.
It's what they deserve.
People did literally used to like sit in keeps and towers by scouts. So like back in the day, World v World was a lot more about siege, and like people were very proud of their siege. So like the German servers typically always ran a ton of siege. German guilds specifically, like French guilds as well. And I remember just like and most like kind of specifically English speaking guilds would just run around with their head like headless chickens. Like it was kind of like there was definitely more of a World v World felt more like a siege mode than it does now. Now it feels as a person as a playing it feels a lot cheesier. It feels like less, I don't know, it feels less based on siege than anything else. I feel like with World v World,
less siege and more cheese.
I like it that it's not as based on siege anymore. I like.
But there is siege, like it's forts and castles and shit.
Turtle. Can we bring the siege turtle?
Hopefully. But yeah, that's just a personal opinion thing. But anyway, I'm barring that. Continue.
Yeah. So no, I think if World vs. World alliances for World vs. World alliances to succeed, it's got to be the betas have to keep going. The betas have to be successful. Maybe if we're lucky, it gets released 2 months after EoD comes out. But if we are going to take the time, because honestly, ideal World versus World alliances would have come out before End of Dragons came out, so that
that was probably the plan a while ago.
It might have been the plan. Who knows? But now that it's coming afterwards, maybe take a little bit of extra time instead of just 2 months. Maybe take a little extra time. Put in some of those.
Is it definitely coming after?
I think it probably will
Yeah.
be.
I think
based on how the first two betas went.
He's already not going to come with, because he should come with.
Maybe, but definitely seasons will be coming after.
But aren't they also going to do like an actual alliance beta?
Rick's face is like, what do you think, Rick? What do you think,
I
Kroof?
don't think that can happen.
What do you think? You don't think it's going to happen? Why are you making these faces at me? I need to know.
Time-wise, aren't they? They're doing the grouping of the guild, but then aren't they going to do like a separate alliance system beta?
Yeah.
I don't think they have a month. I think it's going to take more than a month or 3 or 4 to do that.
But betas are like can be anything. Like this could be just a testing of the system. They might not release the UI or anything.
Maybe they'll do a live beta and then do things live, like increase the systems live. Honestly, I've been saying this since it started, but it looks like it's not going to happen for release. I think the game needs a in-game looking for guild system in order for alliances to succeed.
We've talked about this before, yeah.
Because it's difficult to find a guild you want, and especially difficult since it's going to rely entirely on the guild you're in. The World versus World alliances, it's so important to be in a guild you want to be in for World versus World, and it's hard to find the right guilds, and because you have to go, either you're lucky and you find a good one in map chat, or you go look online somewhere, but there's no like good way to find it online, official way. So yeah, I think
it's mostly map chat, right?
Yeah, I mean, map chat, you can use, I mean, there are ways to use those other tools, or Reddit or forums or Discords and stuff like that to look for people to connect with. But I do agree, and we've talked about the fact that I think that some of the grouping systems in Guild Wars 2 could be improved. And it is kind of difficult at this point because we don't really have like one major hub that just on the fly allows you, I don't know, to queue up for one of the old dungeons if you're a new player trying to get through them. And I get this question all the time. New players try to go into them because the story tells them to, and then they're so confused, and then they finally get a group that's going to go in, but like the group blasts it with the, you know, like speed strats, and the little player's dead on the floor because some traps killed them, and they don't know what happened. Like these systems to group or to like instantly queue into content, or I think they could use a bit of an update, even though I honestly do love that there are a lot of places that you have to go. But like when you think about it now and you think like, okay, well, there's fractals, but then if I want to do direct response missions, I'm going to need to go to Eye of the North. But then if I'm going to do these ones, I need to go to the Pool of Memories. But then if I'm going to do, and that's fine. But again, I think that making all of these things more cohesive across the board and more accessible, including, you know, tools to find and group with people and guilds and things is important. Something else that I also heard recently is that with these alliances, I do think some of the considerations for the future moving forward, right? This first step is super important, but the idea that I believe right now, you can only, like it's account wide what you're choosing to represent, right? So it's not like a per character thing. So if you're in multiple guilds with different friends groups or different people playing different characters, and you want like one character that you're going to be doing this effort with and then the other in a different one, you can't like distinguish separately. So something like these, you know, periods where, you know, you were kind of hypothesizing, Boots, like if we got the leaderboards back, that would mean that a lot of people were just forced, if you have to sign up or register, whatever it is, to say like, hey, I want to compete in this leaderboard, you know, version, or I want to be part of this season for it. That then for all of those 2 months or however long it would be, you would have to be representing and in that faction. Whereas if people do want to go more socially to like hang out with some other people or hang out with a streamers community that's doing World versus World one day or something like that, it's going to cause some slight problems with that too. So I think a lot of that, like they're bigger considerations, but I agree with you in that I think bulking up the ways that you can connect with groups to do that content, and then the rewards and achievement systems that come from that content is a big first step.
They did say they were going to address rewards for World versus World also after these.
Yeah, that's what I think additional rewards always incentivizes players. I thought the War Claw was such a smart move to put into World versus World. I know, Kroof, you have a lot of opinions on that, but in that I was a player that had never set foot in World versus World, but then found out that there was a mount affiliated with it. That got me into the game mode. And I was really curious to earn something like that then would have relevance in a game mode like that. So whether or not people like the Warclaw itself or what it's done to the game mode, I think that rewards and incentives that are kind of like that are unique to the mode are important, as well as a future for it, right? Are there going to be new maps? Are there going to be new types of fortresses introduced? New features that will go on a rotating schedule? Like it's the same map, but there are different keeps, castles, things like, things that might substitute in and out, different setups to it that might change your strategies. That to me would be like the interesting, exciting future of World versus World.
It's interesting because unfortunately they did that with Heart of Thorns, and it fell flat. The map designs are really, really awesome and amazing, and then people have worked on some of them, not there anymore, but they like the maps were great. The ideas are great, but I think it veered so far away from what there already was in the game that people got confused. Like sometimes people just don't want new stuff, I feel like, and they get confused. And I'm like, well, that's a shame because the maps are great, and it would have been just great to see us have a little bit more time with them to see where they went, but we didn't in the end. I think don't talk about underwater. Don't start talking about underwater. Also, quick point, just before you say anything, Nick Hernandez did say also at Rookery to the strike mission question you had a little bit back, we did indeed say that strike missions will be coming with End of Dragon's launch. It's confirmed in the strike missions blog post. So launch, will it be the challenge modes as well? Would be interesting. I would say probably that makes sense for them to be there as well, I guess.
Nick can't confirm that they'll be there as well, but I think Reader Geek said earlier that that someone said somewhere it's a month away afterwards.
I believe I also had heard either on a live stream somewhere or just like in passing on social media that it was maybe going to be later. I think that'd actually be smart because it gives people time to learn those boss mechanics of the normal fights, and then a month later, if you've completed them, have a reason to go back.
Wouldn't you hope that they would add more though? Different new stuff?
Yeah, that's challenge mode. Challenge mode I hope will be like different mechanics, enhanced versions of those fights.
I see Fox says they said on July 27th that challenge modes would come shortly after launch. So what that means, we're not totally sure. I mean, I honestly think you could do it either way. To be completely clear, I'm gonna have a siren going by possibly that you'll hear in a second, so enjoy. It'll add drama.
Bad boys, bad boys. What you gonna do?
So I mean, I think they could do either way, right? That like possibly you have the regular strikes in something like a core expansion, and then when you get to the end of the game, like the end of the expac, there's somebody you talk to who's like, and now you get to unlock the challenge modes or something, and then right off the bat you have something to work on. But I do also think it's smart to, to have a little bit of time so that you can see how players are responding to it, what the feedback is, what the fine tuning might be with the full player base actually engaged with it, and to give people something like, hey, did you enjoy these core fights? Great. Well, hey, 3 weeks, 1 month, whatever it is, the challenge modes are coming, and then we've got other stuff.
Can you imagine if strike mission monthly? A monthly strike mission was added?
I would ascend.
There's just so many bosses.
I mean, it seems feasible.
You could bring dungeon bosses back. Like you could literally be like, if you think about like Honor of the Waves, there's a really couple of good bosses in there as well, which are actually quite challenging. There's quite good challenging bosses in every single dungeon.
I won't lie. I always love new stuff. I think most people do, right? Like, and especially if they were going to tie it into like living season story beats or something where it depends on how they want to structure it, right? Because I totally agree that I think you could just do 3 random bosses that maybe are just in a spot on a map, or that, have kind of something to do with the area, or a vibe, or, a look or feel you wanted. I do really love the idea of getting new stuff that they could more organically and more efficiently work into the story maps and stuff that they're already working on, and then have those harder versions as well. But I mean, there are a lot of bosses they could do throwbacks with that, in between stuff. If it was one boss, I think, once a month wouldn't be impossible. Would they want to release them more in set when they are releasing other efforts? Maybe. Like, I could definitely see it being, here's a couple or, 3, and it comes out with the, pacing of the living season episode or something. I could see that.
That's kind of like a dream scenario more than anything. Like knowing that it takes a long time to do that stuff. I'm not like kind of disrespecting that kind of process. But yes, I think it would be cool. I think more doable if they did. I think the more I think about like the past stuff, and I'm just thinking, I guess I got to get a bit keen as well, because I started thinking about old bosses and old fights where I'm like, oh, this would be cool if it was more difficult. And I was just like, thinking about some kind of boss you fight in maybe like the original story, or like having Zaitan as a strike would be just would redeem the story as if an additional thing, like redeem that last fight, not really the story, but the end fight was very underwhelming. And like, that
was my favorite fight in the game.
Wow.
Oh, you were fired.
It was very intense. You weren't sweating?
Actually fired.
I was sweating. My hands were clammy. It was so intense. But I actually, it was cool. I also agree with the idea of going back to previous expansions. And I think for the dragons in particular, those champions, like for core, we'd have a strike mission for the mouth and the eye, and then Zaitan. For Heart of Thorns, you would have a strike mission for Fowlin and the 3 Mordrim commanders, and then Mordramoth himself. And then
you have a return to achievement for them.
Yeah, Path of Fire. Then you would do like the Herald of Balthazar strike mission. And what's another one? Maybe the Crystalline. That was a part of the story. The Crystalline when you're in Glenn's Lair. And then Balthazar's boss fight. There's a lot of possibilities with the strike mission system. So I hope that it is something more consistent that we can rely on, whatever they do. But I also agree, new things are also great.
We need a mix. You have to have the new. You have to have the new with the old. Like you have to probably up a little bit more.
And I wouldn't say just like going back and putting them in a strike mission, but like actually revamping them to have different, slightly challenging mechanics. Because that would fall flat if they're just like, here's a strike mission that is exactly the same Fowlin fight that you can kill in 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, there would have to be different updates or some kind of evolution. I think New World's doing something quite good, which is in PTR right now, and where they basically mutations, I think they're called. I can't remember, where the dungeon mutates like difficulty, and like there's different mechanics and there's different stuff which happens in each dungeon.
Path of Exile, I wonder.
Sorry.
Oh, like Path of Exile or things like that.
Kind of, yeah. But like they've already had these ideas coming out now. I mean, I know what New World's had its problems, but some really good ideas. I mean, I guess ESO's got veteran dungeons and all that kind of stuff, which is just a bit harder. Sometimes they're not that difficult anyway. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Just to round out the pillars of content. Maybe a little bit of a harder discussion. What can we expect and what can we hope for PvP after EoD? Because I know they did say that they'll try to do balance more often, which will help, which will be good. But what else can you do?
That's PvE as well.
Yeah, but I think they meant specifically for competitive mode. So
yeah, World v World I think is there. I think honestly, Boots, World v World I think is their focus now PvP wise. Okay. I think PvP is done.
But I think PvP has a lot of potential to really do wacky changes.
Oh no, PvP is not done. Like in terms of like PvP being done, I don't mean just like they're not.
You just mean there won't be new tournaments coming out for it.
I think they're gonna put it in the hands of the community now. It's
wasn't there mention that they were working on like a 10v10 game mode?
That was a long time ago.
Back.
Yeah.
I would like to see like an 8v8. I think an 8v8 would do well. I mean, maybe not a 10v10.
At the end of the day, like they've got like if you think about their major tournaments that they had, like Tournament of Legends is filtered into the automated tournament system. So that automated tournament system. So if you don't know what the automated tournament system is, it is literally that. It's automated. It's a system which is engaging old tournaments. Things like Tournament of Legends where you could win a legendary. And the ArenaNet used to run themselves there was a crew called DPS, there was I think the Blues organization and other people who organized it, ESL did all this stuff, and now it's just in the game.
You don't think that? Okay, so I understand that you're saying that they're not going to do the same thing they did with Heart of Thorns, where they're going to say, "Hey, we have $400,000 we're going to spend on tournaments this year." Obviously,
that's never happening again.
Exactly,
never happening again.
No, but there's
never say never. In the wise words of Justin Bieber, never say never.
Yeah, there's still things that they could do for PvP as a game mode. Obviously, the balance patches are going to be a big deal.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
But there's still, can there be new maps on the table? Is there the possibility of a new game mode that's not too difficult to design, perhaps?
I'll give you this, okay? It's similar to raids, population-wise. It's similar to raids. Think about the population that engages in raids. The population that engages in World v World is actually really huge still. And it has been because of the amount of servers and the amount of people. If you go into any World v World, you can find pretty much that, like, even the evenings on the NA, there's queues in areas, like on most places. And there's quite a lot of people. Whereas if you play PvP, you're playing, and you can go and check out Muckluck's clips for this. He gets very unhappy. But like, not I'm for Muckluck anyway.
Flame
Muckluck. Flame people. But basically he and I and other people, you end up finding people. So imagine you're in gold division. So anyone that plays competitive games, you know about divisions, and sports.
Or if you did elementary math.
Yeah, we learn all about gold divisions in elementary math.
But if you're in gold 2, you could be playing with anyone from legendary, almost, it feels like, depending on your queue, to someone who's lower down in silver.
But that's a population problem, right?
But based on population is why raids probably haven't been increased in terms of, the amount of people. Like, they've literally sold us this during a stream before. They've talked about the actual population that plays in raids in a way to explain that, not in a way that they've said, we shouldn't focus on this because of X. They've kind of hinted though. They've kind of
so they've adjusted, right? So they're concentrating on strike missions to cater still to those people.
That's true. That's true.
Who do raids.
So you think they'll change, like, to modes wise?
Maybe, and I also think that it's possible if they ever do a Steam release that the population will have an uptick both in raids possibly and PvP.
This is something that I've been thinking about. I've had a suggestion for a long time, is that in PvP specifically, this is a really long discussion probably, though I need to get PvPers involved as well. But I know Boots and Kroof, you PvP quite a lot in the past anyway, and I'm not sure about Rook. I know you've jumped in there. I've been there when you have.
Yeah, I'm actually top ranked.
Yeah.
I
like it when you did the draw drop.
I don't want to make you all feel bad about yourselves, but I am number 1 Mr. PvP. That's me.
Wait, you're Mr. PvP?
I am Mr. PvP.
Wow, that's the most toxic PvP I've ever met. Actually.
Well, look,
you called me trash.
I did, and I stand by it.
Is it true though? Is it true that you're trash, or are you actually good?
No, he's recycled. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's no.
But PvP is like, the thing is, PvP naturally gets life breathed into it when you have an expansion. You don't even need to add new modes because you've got specializations. Specializations actually enhance a lot of the content and change it because you've got the option to evolve and change your gameplay and style of playing because of the meta's going to change completely. My content for a long time in Guild Wars 2 was just literally a balance patch. Like, a balance patch sometimes was more important to me than having a living world. Well, no, it was always more important to have instead of a living world until I started to venture into other content. But then but if you hear the response from most people that play 2v2s or 3v3s or Stronghold or any new mode that comes into the game,
they don't enjoy it that much. I understand.
And I'm just like, but that's not like
that's not. But hold on a second though. That's not only because of the mode itself.
Yeah.
That's also because of the balance for that mode.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I know what you're about to say.
So they are going to be doing more balance more often, and I think that could help PvP a lot. That might bring more players back, more players in. If Steam it comes out and more players come into PvP because of that. And let's say in an ideal scenario, they look at this, they see more people come into PvP, they decide to start doing more for it besides balance patches. What do you think they could do post EoD to help the PvP scene?
I think Kroof needs to answer this question. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure at the moment.
There are so many. Like, I'm in such a good place in my life that I'm just like always like thinking of more and doing, like, just trying. Like, this I feel like is a period of just trying it's always a little cautious because you always want to say try new things and be bold. But with PvE, we've tried so many things that's like just kind of stick to one at this point. But I think the opposite could be said with PvP. We've had Conquest for years, and then we got Stronghold. It was tried, it didn't really work out.
I actually like Stronghold.
I like Stronghold too. So like you could always try to go back and have those like off-season moments, which we've seen them do more so, where you have this off-season of just Stronghold or just 3v3s or just Deathmatch. I think that has a lot of value in it.
Oh, the seasons are good. They're mini seasons.
But having some like reward to that possibly, but even beyond that, trying like different game modes like capture the flag I think could be really interesting in a Guild Wars 2 setting, because there's so many like teleport, stealth, reveal, mobs, crowd control.
Well, Guild Wars modes would be essentially what I think a lot of people would want to bring back, like bring back some of those modes which were so intrinsic to the Guild Wars experience that I missed out on. I'm gutted that I did. Because apparently it was
5v5 guild battles.
Yeah, I mean, with the alliance systems and things like that, I think that the foundations to do other things and expand even what PvP can do, it's there. It's interesting for me with PvP because I think a lot of the discussion around it oftentimes gravitates towards the competitive mindset of it, which is fair. Right? I think the most dedicated people that you're going to see and the people that are the ones oftentimes speaking the most about the game mode are the people who are the ones that are interested in the competitive cycles and the like higher tier gameplay, I guess you could say, of PvP overall. But I mean, I think that what Kroof's saying is it makes total sense. Play around with game modes. I've even recently seen like, some like Overwatch payload-esque things that other games have started to mimic for PvP modes. I've seen things like MOBA Light, where you have these lane sort of areas and you're trying to push through them, and you might have like special action or weapons or things that you can activate. Is that what Stronghold was? I never played it.
It was MOBA like.
Okay, like a MOBA Light kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot to be said about that. And I also think there's something to be said about maybe if, as we're talking about, there is a really specific niche group and you're trying to figure out how to make this mode something that more people want to do, then maybe try to put some modes in which there might be incentives the community would want. I mean, fashion, mount skins, mounts, like all
mount skins, yeah.
People will go out of their way to get them, and especially if they're kind of like shown or led in some way, be it through the story or something else, right? You could put some PvP modes in and or have a roster like a roulette of PvP modes that are purely meant to just be fun, silly, dumb things. You could have like we have some kind of like that in guild missions, I guess. Like I still find the chicken races hilarious, or like all the different ones where you get transformed into something. You could do PvP modes that really were just meant to be kind of fun. You could have, that could just be like really silly chaos. What comes to mind is
the Christmas one's good. Like the festival events. The Christmas one is actually one of my favorite events for PvP. Like I genuinely really enjoy that when you've got these, you can just pick your class specifically, and you can be like a healer, or you can be like a snowball thrower, or putting a wall up on something. Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, even I mentioned Overwatch earlier because I played it a lot, but they had a couple holiday events that I think they were surprised by how popular they were. There's like the one where you're doing the snowball fight as May, and like that one has its own weird little rule set, and it's really fun. And then they also introduced this one where like one person becomes like the Yeti, and everybody else has to try to survive or take them down. And like that one was also super fun, really interesting. So like if you had little things like that, and then there was some kind of little segue, like even if it was a character on a map or something that was like, yes, this is our ancestral Yeti ring. And if you go into it, you might get transformed into a Yeti, but you can get some cool prizes. And then like, lo and behold, you'd see like the PvP thing pop up, and you'd go as a player like, PvP, you say?
I wonder, actually, that would be weird and interesting if they added, like, because they have, what's it called, crab toss and those things like that. It would be interesting if they added the way to get into crab toss games to the PvP hub instead of the real way you do it right now.
Like the drinking game. The drinking game is a blast, and there's versions of it, but you could do something more like that. I don't know. I just think that you have to choose how you're going to approach it. I play games that have dealt with it in either way. where they appeal mostly specifically to, I hate to say this word, and I do not mean it in a in a way, like the casual population. You hear people use it really snottily all the time, but to me, I'm like,
okay. I think
yes,
it's okay.
but it's like,
in this
Which is a
reference.
very casual MMO.
well, but it's like, I think all kinds of content are worthwhile and enjoyable. So I just like to disclaimer with that, because if you can lean in more towards like, hey, let's tailor stuff for non-competitive high tier game bases and still get more activity and engagement, which then might lead to people going into competitive modes. Of course, I think you also do need to, no matter how small you feel the population is, still have certain cornerstones. PvP shines in Guild Wars 2 for a lot of reasons. Raids also, I think, are super fun. And in any game, they're going to be a small portion of the population, but the interest that's generated from them may be well worth it. So it's about like figuring out how you get enough people in the door to then foster some kind of ongoing or growing community base for a type of content.
I feel like there is a different conversation for PvP, which is one that may not be as easy to approach. And the question really is the community and the way that people treat each other. And I think that's a big part of the reason why people don't go into PvP, which kind of rolls over. And I actually think that what you're talking about, pardon me, Rook, is in terms of like introducing some more fun events and to really kind of lift the spirits maybe of that section is quite a good idea, honestly. But like there is already a lot of rewards. Like they've already tried to pull people in with ascended, legendary skins that come from Living Story, some of the emotes you can get from some of the stuff, Black Lion keys. There's so much stuff, and I'm like, at this point in time, I'm like, rewards would be so cool, but I think that the nature of the beast will never change unless there's some kind of address, that something is addressed with PvP. PvP has so many issues. I mean, every single game I think I played last night had a bots in it. Every single game I have, there's some kind of abuse going on, and that is very synonymous with, PvPing the competitive game modes and games. So I think if Arena can really address that, I feel like people would float to it more, and I actually feel like they could just get people to fall in love with the game modes and what the systems are in there. Because Guild Wars 2, everyone, and someone could probably clip this, has the best MMORPG PvP systems out there. Without a doubt, there is no one that can tell me that there's anything better. You've got like automated tournaments, so you can go into a tournament like 4 times a day with your friends and play in the competitive way, like with people. You can get rewards for that, which are completely different. End of the month, you can get something which is very, very unique. You can play in a ranked mode where you can play against other players. Sure, there are issues with it, but it exists. An unranked mode, they have different off seasons, so you can play 2v2, 3v3. You can get there, level 2, boom. You don't need any gear from PvE. You don't need anything. All you need is like expansions if you want to play the newer elite specializations. And that boots, if it goes to Steam, which is what you were talking earlier, is something I would really love to see change. Paying for elite specializations rather than just getting them from an expansion. Because a lot of people would be like, because that's what MOBAs do and stuff. You can pay for champions, or you can earn it with in-game currency. So maybe you can unlock potential like elite specializations. I mean, it's an idea.
A bit more challenging because there's.
I mean, it's an idea. But this is the thing.
I'm happy with the way Guild Wars 2 does it, which is essentially.
Would I like more elite specs? Absolutely. Under the context that everything is, logically more or less balanced. There will always be outliers, but it does kind of make it a little bit more difficult.
But think about what I'm talking about is like a couple of bucks from the elite specialization.
I know, but isn't that like begging for people to start saying it's pay to win?
No. Because that's what this is what competitive games, like other competitive games, do as well. This is their like. But then again, you can say, but this is just my own thoughts and opinions and ideas and wishes for the game. It's not. I
actually do want to say, I don't think the idea of adding something in like an elite spec that you could earn in game is a bad one. I actually think that's super creative and really interesting. If you had something that was like, I don't know, a hero among heroes, or some kind of achievement where if you had conquered all the challenges, so like if you had done these certain things in PvP, world versus world, if you'd gone and you'd done raids and you'd done strikes, or you'd done, whatever they wanted to put into that, being able to unlock some kind of bonus elite spec, I actually think is a really clever and interesting idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if overall, and this is just my opinion, I don't know if overall I think that the idea of, yes, like a paywall for future elite specs, in a sense, would fit with the overall context of Guild Wars 2,
It's
where
not-
it has been.
It would be
And it's
in-game
not like-
currency as well. Like
Well,
in-game
elite specs
ways to
are
unlock.
already.
Yeah.
I mean, elite specs are already behind a paywall. So
Yeah.
No, but
I
that's
don't
what I'm
think elite
saying. No, but this is what I'm saying.
I don't think. I mean, in any
I
other
think I
game,
would
we
need to
wouldn't
explain
we
it better.
wouldn't see a game who made a new class and you have to buy it. I don't think. At least I don't think many people would
So,
say that would
can
be.
I explain what I
buy
actually
to
want?
win.
Let me explain the actual
Or pay to
premise of
win.
what I'm thinking here.
Please, yeah.
So, because I think there's confusion. Not paying for things twice is not obviously not good. But so the option would be, and this is actually a conversation I've had with people like devs I've had in the community, PvP community, which has actually been something which is kind of a cool idea that was kind of going around. And you could have, so you can buy an expansion for $15-20, right? And this was probably more relevant when the Pro League was going on than any other time. Probably wouldn't work as well now. Just an option. Some people play Guild Wars 2 and they just play PvP. They don't play anything else. They don't play anything else. And that was very much the case back in the day as well. You can play the core classes free. You still have to have the expansions to to have the elite specialization. So by what some people are saying in chat, it's already pay to win anyway, which doesn't make any sense because it's not. Because many competitive games have that access where you can either pay for a hero or you progress through the game to unlock the hero, which gives you more of a reason to play. It's just part of that ethos. It's a way. So the idea I had was either you spend a couple of bucks, you don't buy the entire expansion, which is, $30, whatever, and you get the elite specialization. Okay, you take away the money of getting that expansion, but you also bring in potentially new people who have got the game free to play, and then if they buy the elite specialization or they buy parts of it, that
So
takes
you're
money.
not talking about new elite specs. You're talking about the current
Unlock
elite
it.
specs.
Or any, I
Unlock it.
guess. I don't know. Like maybe. But like in how in Steam you have this thing where if you've bought like a game from a bundle or something, you get the bundle cheaper. Like later, if you want to buy it, like you get money off because you purchase these things. Like I guess I've had all of these ideas like in my head for a long time. It doesn't matter. Essentially, all I'm saying is, and I think because I've been in that community for such a long time, I have a very unique point of view. Especially being like, I've commentated it and access being a thing. I've always been like, Guild Wars 2 being on Steam and PvP. At that time, if Guild Wars 2 had been on Steam and there had been so much access for new players, I think the scene would have been awesome and we would have had more people watching and more access and stuff like that. I just think it would be cool.
I think you got a point, and I'm not opposed to like, at least for previous, like for all the elite specs we currently have, EoD, blah blah blah. We don't have EoD yet, but when we do,
Yeah.
I see no big reason as to why you wouldn't allow people on Steam to buy each individual elite spec instead of buying the whole expansion. But I think it's in Guild Wars or ArenaNet's best interest not to do that for new because I think they would rather sell things as a package so that it will get those players hopefully interested in the rest of the game.
Potentially, yeah.
Unless
Well-
they made PvP only elite specs, where you could only use it in PvP, and it was specifically tuned to player versus player encounters.
I think I'm mainly even thinking about it being like just a separate thing at the moment as well. Like
Yeah.
I'm thinking that so much that way. I've got a lot of, I guess in a way I'm also thinking it's for people that don't want to spend so much money on an expansion that they can spend a couple of bucks and it feels more accessible, or they don't even have to spend. I think ideally my idea is that people don't have to spend that money, and that there are people like whales that would just be like, I'm going to buy all the elite specs, so I'm just going to go buy the expansion, but then I haven't got as much money, and instead I can convert gold to gems and I can buy the elite specialization that way because it keeps people in the game. I don't know.
I don't think that I think it's a really interesting idea. Like,
You
honestly,
think it's a bad idea,
like,
Rook? It's okay.
I wanna be
Interesting
honest.
means bad. I get
No.
it. Everyone hates
I
me.
don't. I
This food
genuinely.
tastes interesting.
Interesting. Thank you, Jebro.
But it's just
No,
my.
I want to be clear. When I say interesting, I really do truly mean that. I think there is something about it that is very progressive and that we haven't necessarily seen. Like you said, in MMOs, we have seen in MOBAs. I personally have found that to be one of the most off-putting and angering things about MOBAs to me, to be honest. I actually hate it.
Yeah.
But only because, like, I always feel as a new player when I come into the game, I'm very excited to see what it has to offer. And in the case of MOBAs, right, much of what you are doing, because there is usually not story, there is not anything else, right? So much of what you are doing specifically comes down to the characters you have and the different play styles you get to play when you're in the exact same matches. So it does drive me nuts when I'm in a MOBA and I'm like, here's my 2 little baby punishment people, and then I either have to pay a ton of money to get all the other ones, or I have to, like, you know, so in that context, I dislike it. In the context of an MMO, I think it's an interesting idea. What I do think is the pros, right? Like you were saying,
ESO you pay for a class.
You do, and you can unlock, right?
Yeah.
But ESO also, their entire model is based around more of an episodic, piecemeal experience, right? You want these dungeons, you can subscribe, do the optional subscription and be able to play them for free, or you can buy the dungeons to have access to them permanently. You want this thing, you can buy it. You want that thing, you can buy it. It's like being at a buffet where each thing you have to buy a la carte, right? To make your meal, which is fine. And there's some interesting things with then the idea of a membership or subscription in that regard. But in something like Guild Wars 2, part of the cost and draws of an expansion, right? So all of the development and all the things that are going into it and the returns that they get come from, if we're going to make a huge expansion, then we need the sales on it, right? So then the idea with that being, what do we offer as part of the meal that we serve? And elite specializations are a massive backbone, like many other games where new classes that come out or a new race that comes out or something like that is a massive backbone of that meal. So then how do we balance it? I like the idea of, yes, like maybe there being specific ones to only PvP, but then again, that development time that's going into that, you know, could we not across the board make this more interest or like more applicable? Or like, you know, old ones. Yes, make it so that maybe old ones, you could unlock them and be able to play them. But at the same time,
I don't mean all of them. Yeah, no.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, no, core would always be free. Like that would just be like free. Never would.
Right. No. But the Heart of Thorns ones and the.
Yeah. Well, like someone said, like ideally, I just want them to be free. I mean, this is kind of the idea behind it. Like ideally, like in PvP specifically, because it would be a way to sell them. Because essentially, you can try them. Like MMORPG players on the whole aren't going to play PvP just so they can use the elite specialization and do that. They're going to probably buy it, and they'll probably be, you know, they'll get into it. There's a cool thing that World of Warcraft does. Careful, calm down. There's a cool thing that World of Warcraft does. Like, have you played the tutorial? Have you ever played the tutorial with the newer one? You can play any class you want, and you don't even have to. You can test it. You can test the class. I know in Guild Wars 2, obviously, essentially, you can potentially do that. You can just delete your character, but you're playing at level 1. Or you can get, you know, a level boost and do it that way. But like World of Warcraft does that. And it's pretty good. But like in terms of, I don't know, I guess always with PvP, I'm sad and also excited in different ways. And I think I love the mode, but it frustrates me immensely.
I was watching some YouTube videos a while ago. Actually, when I say a while ago, I mean like 2 days ago.
That is a while ago.
Anyways, I was watching a video recently, and they were talking about some competitive games and game modes, and how a company was designing this game with the intention of it being competitive and an esport. So it highly influenced how they developed their characters and how they developed the game mode of PvP as a system. Yeah. And then they also compared it to another game that had more success, where it's just about fun. And I think Guild Wars 2's PvP for a long time has been too serious because it's only been conquest. I don't think this is really an issue of elite specs and accessibility, because if you even have those accessibilities, you still have the same game mode. You still are playing the same thing. You are still playing with the same community mindset that has been unchanged. So I think this could be from a developmental aspect where you continually cycle out the game mode of conquest. So it's not each season is conquest, but then it's like stronghold or a 3v3 or a fun like brawl situation with certain cool mechanics. I think it needs to be less about structuring it in a system that it is hardcore esport material,
I agree that.
where it is just more for fun and it is a pleasurable experience.
Well, it has to be additional. It has to be additional. You have to have that audience.
Yeah.
You have to have the competitive audience.
Put in daily or monthly, daily or monthly or weekly tournament goer.
I guess. And like even have like dailies and weeklies or monthlies attached to player versus player, and even PvE and all that stuff.
Have a mode that chills everyone out every so often.
Yeah, because I feel like the climate, one's really adding to the arena of the population, but everyone who's still there is just getting more and more salty because we're just used to like the bad habits and the single game mode that we're all playing and we're all fighting the same people and there's like no variation, and that really kind of eats away at the mind.
I am very passionate about this because it's been something that's been very important for my whole journey through this game, because I've just been a part of it for so long. Well, I would say more so when I was commentating it and talking about it, and always part of these conversations where what can we do, like literally with developers talking about how this kind of stuff could change. Like thinking about MOBAs was something that was always talked about, because at the time, like peak Guild Wars 2 PvP competitive, MOBAs were the biggest thing. Obviously still are, but like, you know, there's other games that come along with that, like Valorant and CSGO and stuff, which was back in the day massive. Are you
gonna do we're a little bit late to the party now, but you want to do a Guild Wars 2 Battle Royale mode?
No.
They did do that though. They still do. There is that mode.
A Battle Royale mode would be really cool.
I mean, something like that in like one of the labyrinth settings or something, like Mad King's Labyrinth would be really fun if you were like sneaking around little corners and like hiding and
things.
Don't they do
that? There is that mode in there where you turn everyone to ghosts, I guess. It's not exactly the same.
Oh yeah, there is. Yeah. Like they could do something like that PvP wise.
More classical like Battle Royale type thing where it's like Apex, where you have you get slotted onto like teams of 3v3 and you
What's the new hotness? What's the new hotness with
Among Us?
Probably Fortnite when they release it. They could do something
like an imposter thing, though. They could do a mode like that. I've seen, different things like that. I mean, they could even, if they wanted to, introduce a whole. Okay, so like in 14, there is this thing called the Gold Saucer, which is like an entertainment hub, essentially.
Yes.
I mean, the actual longevity of the Gold Saucer, I think, is something to talk. That's like a much bigger conversation, and whether or not I think it succeeds overall. But as a kind of like theme park thing that technically I would qualify much of it being PvP because you are in it with other players, they could easily do something more like that. That was like, gosh, you could even have a race to the top jump puzzle kind of thing. You could have, I mean, there's just so many. You could do something with underwater. You could do something like they could do all sorts of stuff like that. And now, do I think that should be the future of all PvP forever? No. But do I think that, like you were saying, Kroof, would it introduce some fun? Would it introduce some things that like more players could kind of accessibly jump into and just do just for funsies? Or if there was like, a daily reward for it or something like that? Yeah, 100%. And I think it would breathe some more life into some of it.
I wanted to cycle back to when Rook was talking about Jebro's idea of the earnable or buyable elite specs, and I think here Rook's point about it being such an integral part of the expansions as a selling point makes a very good point. But so and if we can alter your idea to earnable in game,
that's what
elite
I said.
Specs. Yeah,
I said that.
I think possibly that might be. I think possibly that might be what was on the table or thought about if they were going to continue with Saga instead of expansions.
like introducing elite specs during a season.
Exactly.
Yeah, they had
Expansion level.
mentioned it. Like,
Yeah.
I believe
I would
some
love
people
that.
had added some developers during Icebreach Saga, and they were like, "It's not off the table. We're thinking about new weapon types and maybe elite specs." And
Yeah,
Yes.
but I think at this point it's kind of off the
yeah.
table now.
Yeah, but I'd like that idea.
during a
Boots.
season, yeah, they're doing expansions.
But like,
Keep
this
that-
is the post EoD conversation. Or we can switch over to this. Like, how would it? Fuck PvP. I'm just done with it. No, I love PvP. I do love it. It's in that conversation. I just get too keen about it. I get too. I think there's some there's some issues there. there was a lot of unfortunate treatment, I think, of players and stuff, which I'm still not happy about. But that was a long time ago, and those people are gone, thankfully. Yes, I think that would actually be quite cool. I think in terms of like post, and I want to check in with you all to make sure that we're okay to keep going for a bit.
I got a good 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Okay, 12 minutes.
Back.
I'll be right back. We can't, I mean, how long Rook and Kroof have you got? And Kroof's gone.
I
I'm
do
good.
have to make dinner at some point.
You're good.
I'm on the East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I think Kroof and Rook might be good. We won't go over 4 hours. On the street, he's going to 3. I should have just, no, I did not say F EOD. No, PvP. I mean, I don't mean it. I was just joking. I was, as in terms of I'm moving on from conversation. It was just, that was my first F-bomb on the podcast.
If there was
for
anything in
2020.
life he meant more than that, I don't think there is anything.
Yeah,
It's
no, came right from the heart. That
Yeah.
one, you know.
But, I mean,
bubbled
there's...
up inside him and then just...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that there are much larger questions around PvP and far more large scale that has to be addressed than we could ever talk about without doing like 3 separate podcasts about it, right? But as far as what are considered to be the pillars of this game and looking forward post End of Dragons, what if they're going to keep these game modes, you know, how could they continue to develop them? I think it was a good conversation. There's a lot to talk about.
I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hello.
Oh, hey, Kroof. Hey. Hey there.
So,
I'm back.
post EoD, post or during is as well, to be fair. So we kind of did the pillars. I mean, these are still kind of part of the pillars, I guess, that Boost is talking about. But in
We're
terms
so much
of
talk about pillars. What about columns?
Mm.
Anyway, that was bad. Anyway, move on.
these are collars as well. Columns.
We could talk a lot about Collins.
Johansson's.
If you
holding
want.
swords.
Water for Coco. Oh, I remember that. Heart of Thorns.
Okay, so elite specializations or weapons being introduced post expansions and also just being released with over time is something which I actually think Boots is a really good idea. I think people might get a little bit jealous, but I actually think it would do something else you were talking about as well before, which was like trying other classes. And I feel like that would actually be like, oh wow, there's this new hotness thing. Which I think is very, very Rook word, I think. I don't know why I said that. You just said Rook and a Kroof word, hotness. I don't know. One of you said it earlier.
When have
and
I
was
ever
like,
said hotness?
I don't know,
Wow.
hotness?
Oh.
Maybe someone said that. Someone said
It's
it
not
earlier.
the vibe, Jebro.
Maybe
it's not the
Boots
vibe.
did. Someone said hotness earlier. I don't know why.
I said,
harking on
I
that.
said, what's the new hotness when I was talking about PvP modes?
Okay, cool.
But yeah, anyway.
I saw it
right.
from Boots. I saw it from someone. And like having that kind of, I guess, like getting people to try out for specs, but like what else that kind of gets added along the way and stuff that I'm thinking about store, thinking about things that maintain other MMOs and help them to survive and carry on, things to people to look forward to maybe between, you know, living world story releases each 3 months, every 3 months, for example. You know, it's not going to take that long. It's 2-3 hours, you're done. Average time probably is a little bit, maybe a tiny bit longer or less. But, you know, Kroof was talking about a sub again the other day. We've talked about an optional sub on here. I think with the option, I think just having optional sub is a good buffer for when people do fall off a lot of the time, because almost, those optional sub people can kind of be the buffer of financial support for companies, obviously, which is always good. I don't know. I'm not sure if we want to have that optional sub conversation, but I think, anything in between that we feel like could be revamped or they could have a look at to either bring people back into the game post EoD, because I think, new players it's always about getting new players in, especially now because of, the different things going on.
Steam release, yeah.
And like roadmaps, revamping old
to bring
content. Blah, blah, blah.
some players, for example, I know for a fact that my wife would come back and play some Guild Wars 2 if World vs. World Seasons comes back, because she keeps saying she stopped a little bit after Heart of Thorns came out, and mostly it was the most fun she had in the game. So I think that's at least one player.
You heard that. Let's go.
That's worth the production time, in all honesty. Anything else?
What's the question?
It's a very long-winded question. What would you want to see post or during EoD to either keep players playing or to bring new players in? Like, what are big things?
This is really tricky because
I've got one in here for you, Kroof. If you don't latch onto this, I'm going to be sad. Have you seen the document?
I saw the document, but I have a short-term memory.
I will just
Jebro.
make it very big and also make it bold. Maybe underline it. Maybe change the color.
What's this document?
Yeah, I'm looking at the document.
I know.
Open, and I have been looking at it.
I know.
Thank you very much, Rick.
So there
Anyone
are so
else
many.
wants to see it? I know you can't probably.
Wardrobe slots. That's what you were talking about, right? That's in the document.
It's over Kroof's face as well now.
Yay.
There it is.
LFG or an LFR.
There you go.
I mean, the whole. I think I would love to have a podcast discussion video, whatever forum, about an entire segment dedicated to how, as veterans, do we think we could better improve the new player experience to make sure that people stay in the game or have just a better new player experience as a whole. But
I think you were there during that podcast, Kroof. I'm not going to
lie. We were playing through the beginner experience. So many things changed, and the things.
So
I
what would you like it to be?
I think that there needs to be a return to the old form of how the story is delivered, in terms of instead of 10 level increments where you unlock story in increments of 10, it should be its original vanilla release where it is a consistent, each 2 levels you gain a new story step, because it does.
Was that what it was?
Yes.
Damn, I can't remember that. Jesus. Was that what it was? No way. I can't remember
and then
that.
they did the whole revamp during, I believe it was around when they did the China release. Then they revamped the whole new player experience with the leveling stuff. And with that, they separated the story. And I think that the story is it's not only amazing, but it's such a core aspect to what Guild Wars 2 is. It's a very narrative-driven game that when you break it up into large windows of 10, the leveling is rather easy when compared to other MMOs, but it's still like, in your mind, you're like, oh, I have to wait to get to level 10. And I was playing with someone who was rather new, and they're like, oh, we have to get to level 10 to do that stuff. They were like, oh, this is going to be a long time.
There is a gap of knowing what to do, I think, traditionally,
There is a bit of a gap. And from that aspect, I think that is one major thing that I would like to see. And in addition to that return to original story pacing, I would actually really like to see dungeons be implemented and necessary in the personal story, because right now it's more so an accessory that you can do when you reach certain levels. But I also think that like dungeons should start from level 10. Your second dungeon should open at 20, then 30, then 40, and it would perfectly lead up to level 80 with Zaitan being at level 80. And then connecting to that, an LFR or an LFG. I think that the early game experience needs to reflect more of a classical or MMO experience and what Guild Wars 2 is, where it's grouping with people, doing raids and dungeons and strike missions. And I also think it would better inform the story. of Guild Wars 2, because the core dungeons have a lot of story and a lot of lore importance in them, and they're kind of optional, but they're talked about widely, but they're a little optional.
Yeah, because there's no instance content other than dungeons until you hit endgame. So true.
And people don't even know that a lot of that stuff exists when they go into it, right? They don't know that fractals are down the road. They don't know that raids are down the road. They may not even know how to connect with, although if you click around on, your icons, you might find things like PvP world versus world. It's a question that every game has to deal with as over time they continue to expand the content that they have. But it does feel like, kind of like I mentioned earlier, there are all these little pieces of amazing things that are in Guild Wars 2, but like if you're just starting out the game, you just don't know what that journey is going to look like. And Kroof, I agree with you. It's like the only thing you do know is that, oh, it's 10 more levels until my next story. And like that can be really slow when there's not a lot of other stuff. Like hearts are kind of quests, but like also not. And there's all these other little things where you're trying to figure out like, what do I do? And then like I mentioned earlier, I do think there are even problems with the dungeons, because at this point, since they were originally released as essentially kind of end game, once you got past that, explorer mode or the, story mode originally into explorers mode. Like there is a real gap for new players where if they try to go in and experience these now without a group that they've explicitly said, like, please do, like, tell me what's happening, or like, don't do the speed strat, oftentimes they just cannot do them. So, I mean, even if there was some way that they introduced some like new beginners fractals, and those fractals were like, I don't even know, like a playable version of those dungeons in like a short abbreviated way, or they were their own story beats that you could also encounter, that like either you could just go in like solo with like an NPC squad and still get to experience something, or like just, you know what I mean? It's these weird little gaps where people don't really know what's coming. And I agree with you in that I think the pacing initially doesn't showcase all the strengths and the range of stuff. And of course, any MMO, you can't base it off the core game, but I think that new players don't know what to expect a lot from Guild Wars 2, and they kind of get into it, and some will stick with it and some won't. And it's kind of, a bummer, because there's a lot to offer, but they just don't oftentimes get to experience it.
I think you can in a way. I know what you're saying in terms of you can't base it off the core game, but I think you can if you're a new player. Like that's their experience, right? If they have that experience walking in and it's not good, like they can, I mean, I know with Final Fantasy 14, it's like, it's always like, it's worth getting through around Reborn because it gets better. And it does. Like, I agree. Like that story experience is tough. And from what I hear from a majority of people is like, you can get this, they enjoy it or they don't enjoy it. There doesn't seem to be much of an in between a lot of the time, but maybe me. But like, I'm kind of like persuaded. But like, a lot of players have that, especially nowadays. And we've talked to them about this before. 2022, 2021. We're talking about the 20s, whatever. But like, people want to get into something if they're not hooked immediately. And this is like goes for a lot of. I don't want to say that. This is go for some people. But like, if you aren't immediately drawn in, they will drop that game or they will drop that thing. Especially nowadays, like the retention for people. What is it on Steam? The average time of a new player to play a game is like 12 minutes or something. Damn. Like, what happens if you don't catch that player in 12 minutes? Like, what are they just going to not play the MMO? Like, MMO is not just for Christmas. But a lot of people don't know that because MMORPGing for a lot of people is new. A lot of people still don't know what this is. Like, it's slowly getting onto consoles. You've got like the main reason that MMOs are more successful nowadays, I like to think, is one of the reasons is because of consoles. Like Final Fantasy 14, for example, ESO. Like people who are mainly console gamers, a lot of console gamers going to PC now as well. You can't grasp those people very, very quickly. Like you're gonna that's an issue. So I think like you have to know that the current game is good for the veteran community. That is something that veteran MMORPG players always get excited about. If that beginning experience is poor, is like they're not gonna hook into that. I think Guild Wars 2 beginning experience is
does a very good job. Compared to most MMOs,
That was
Guild Wars
basically
2,
the point.
yeah, compared to
Sorry, I'm
most MMOs, Guild Wars
long-winded.
2 is a very good leveling experience. But I think you're right, Kroof. I think that you get out of the thing, you do your first story thing, and then you have to wait till level 10.
Yeah.
And then I think a lot of people who are used to just knowing exactly that they have to do story, they want to get through a story, and they're left in this open world with a story 10 levels away. They don't know how long it's going to take to get to level 10.
Yeah.
They might just feel very lost. And so it might actually stop some people from playing at that point, but at the same time, maybe it doesn't.
It's such strange pacing, though, because your first instance is so cinematic, and then immediately after that, you're just like told to do nothing, told to do something, but like whatever you want.
Told to do nothing. You were gonna say. Do people tell you to do nothing?
Well, you're kind of told to do
NPC.
nothing
Hello.
in the sense of the story. Like you actually have to take a break from the story for 10 whole levels, and you're like, I just killed this giant thing, and there's nothing.
And now they're asking me to do bunny chores.
Like you get no immediate sense of what you just did matters in the story. You have to wait quite a bit, an hour or two,
or like
how fast you level.
Who you are and how you fit into everything, and like the basics of the steps you're going to be taking as that character in the world. I agree. Yeah. And I mean, I honestly am somebody who's played a lot of MMOs, and when I first played Guild Wars 2, I had exactly that experience. I think I got through the initial quests, and then I was left to do, 10 levels until the next one, and I was kind of like, and I ran out with a couple friends, and I was, like trying out some fighting, and I fought some guys on a cliffside, and then I never played the game again. It's like, well, that's actually a lie, because I did play the game again. But like, if it hadn't been for the fact that, I mean, like we were saying with 14, right? The community advocating and saying this is so worth it.
Yeah.
I probably, I may not have come back to it. Because I just, again, didn't even know what the full scope of the story would offer. And I didn't feel like I had enough of a running start with my interest in the world and who I was and what was out there to really feel as though like, oh yeah, wow, I'm going to get swept up in this if I just give it a chance. So, I mean, it's very hard because I don't really necessarily think that they can focus on all of the old stuff, right?
Yeah.
They have to release new things. And when it comes to this question, I want to shift the direction a little bit, because I do think that a revamping of some of the original stuff and the pacing is important, and or some kind of alternate start, there's something that would give people another experience, or that would let them get in. I think that's important. But for me, I also...
No, sorry, it was the end of Dragon. Sorry, I was oohing out loud. I didn't realize that. I literally wanted the ooh in my head. No, it was carry on, but like maybe, and while you're carrying on with what you're saying, I'm going to say this very quickly. But there was the area in EoD that we talked about that they brought, that there was there.
Oh yeah. But I do think that like other things that come to mind about like what can we do to continue to interest people in this game. What I see a lot of times is not only like a reestablishing of the things that exist in the game, a clear direction of what players can expect for the future of the game. Like you were talking about world versus world, or these things, we were talking about question mark on raids. Should people who are like, they come up to me and they say, hey, Guild Wars 2, does it have raids? And I'm like, yeah, but like that's, you know what I mean? That should never be the thing that you have to say.
Yeah, but it's the but.
So yes, it's like, it's not only having those things, but then also if you are going to introduce something new, doing it in such a way that again it's focused, and you have those anchors of your other content, but then you are bringing something in that is it's attention catching, right? I think of Ultimate in Final Fantasy XIV. So they decided that with the end game content, you have like extreme primals, then you have savage raids, and then they put in this new thing. And this was something that they introduced, throughout the game's life. And they're like, ultimate fights, like the hardest thing ever in the whole game. And suddenly the communities were talking, and people were talking about this and this new thing that was coming out, and this, a section of other communities came over to experience it for themselves. So I think that for the future of the game, we need to like clearly redefine, reestablish the core things that they want to develop, communicate that clearly to the player base. But I do think that thinking ahead to that thing, like whatever that thing is going to be, I mean, granted, a new race is not something that we're getting, but that would have been traveled waters in Guild Wars 2. That would have been something new. Oh, did you hear that Guild Wars 2 introduced a new race into the game? Like, is that par for the course for their MMOs? Yes. But again, it's like having something that is that talking point that catches people's attention. What exactly that is, I don't know. Maybe you all have ideas.
You know what might do that? In Guild Wars 1, they introduced hard mode. So every single map in game had a little pull down menu you could choose when you enter the map. Instead of being the normal thing that it used to be, is now everything's 2 levels or 3 levels higher than your the highest level in the game. So maybe they could add hard mode for Guild Wars original, the Corteria. They could make you go back, instead of being scaled down to the level of the map, you go in as your level 80 character and everything is level 83.
Like dynamic scaling, as we see in like other games. I could have a whole entire good discussion about the ranking and the de-leveling system.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's it, exactly. I mean, to compare it to Elder Scrolls Online, this is something that Rich, who is the like creative director on that game, said to me, which I was very, and which I've said before, which I was very impressed with, is that when you play Elder Scrolls Online, and depending on which DLCs, expansions you've got, you play the literal tutorial is now one tutorial that you play forever. It used to be different expansions that you used to go and play that, and then that would be the latest one would be a tutorial. But you essentially play through tutorial. Sorry, spoilers for anyone that wants to go play Elder Scrolls Online. You play through this tutorial, but then there are doors where you select which zone you want to go to. It could be a base game door, so you could play on like Aldemir and Dominion. You could play, Ebon Pact, Heart Pact, which are the alliances, or you can go straight to like West Skyrim, or you can go straight to, I don't know, any other zone in the game where there is some kind of maybe beginning, so like latest expansions and whatnot, and you get your choice. But wherever you go, those mobs scale to you. And okay, if you're a high level in the game, yes, naturally you're gonna have more power because you've got more skills. But you can essentially design your own way of playing the game. And no matter which way you play, they've scripted it so that the NPCs respond to you in a way which doesn't negate your experience of having to say that I should have played Molag Ball content right at the beginning of the game where I defeat the first major character like enemy in the game completely, and that's gonna mess up my entire experience because I don't know what the hell's going on. And obviously with Guild Wars 2 doesn't necessarily work because the story is very linear, unfortunately. But there probably could be a way in the core game where you could go where the story is like you play the story the way you play it, in the order you play it, but you can go through different zones and like go to wherever you want to go, and you play in the areas you want to play, so that it's brought into the kind of 2022, which is kind of what Rook's saying, which is important. New stuff. Like, let's give new players new stuff that we've not had before, and make us want to go and play the game from that point of view again as a new player, because that would be just cool for a start to have a completely new experience as a player. Because I mean, I don't know about you, but like I like going to play the same MMO and just leveling up again. That's a fun experience sometimes.
I do too.
Guild Wars 2, unfortunately, you've got the tome, so it's less of a thing like you want to do sometimes. But I feel like maybe letting people call their adventure a little bit more would be quite cool. But I feel like there's a bit of a big overhaul to kind of, that's kind of more of a dream kind of like, ooh, that would be cool. But I like that for ESO. Like I like that for new players. I think it just opens up this adventure so much. Where I'm just like, wow, you can just go wherever you want in this MMORPG and you can follow any story you want.
Yeah, that was the original intention of Guild Wars 2. Like players were supposed to be able to up level themselves to match their friends, and they can go anywhere they want. They decided not to go down that road, but the downscaling is still a thing. So
was that up leveling a thing? Was that something they discussed?
it
The
was
up leveling?
supposed to. Yeah, that was the original intention of the Guild Wars 2 leveling system. That like leveling didn't really matter. It was more so just about like your raw power. And they used levels to do that. And
That would
then
be cool.
eventually they decided not to go with the upscaling, but you can still upscale yourself in World versus World. So the technology is there. They just didn't implement it into PvP or
That's
into
true.
PvP.
Into the map.
Stats, base stats wise, like just pumping
Yeah.
stats, right? And I guess, yeah, which then affect everything, like weapon skills and everything else.
I
That
mean,
would
it's
be
interesting
good.
because they could, I don't know, there's so many things. And again, I don't necessarily
things.
think that they're going to go all the way backwards in, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, so
Have a Cataclysm expansion. I would be down. I would be down for like
I've got it.
remastered.
It's on the document,
mean-
Kroof. Jesus.
They could,
Look at the down dogger.
Tyria Remastered, I think, would be really fantastic. I mean, right now, I do think that, like, again, firmly setting us on a future for the game it feels far more important to me than like going back and doing all, but a Tyria Remastered could be great. And I mean, even if they just supplemented in, maybe there were like quests in between those level 10 thresholds or something that told the story of your class, or like, you were a guardian and like, or just something, or, there are ways that they could do it. Or if they did something like a Tyria Remastered, maybe each zone would have its own little thematic, at least in the core game, some kind of thematic quest chain that if you went in there thinking ESO style, right, where each map has its own overarching narrative and then things that go with that. They could absolutely do something like that
Good.
and make it a little bit more where you felt like your time spent out and about and doing things really matched the level of the detail and care and lore and everything that's in this world that you can find but that you might not know about. I think that doing something like that down the road would be cool.
Do you feel that's a big thing you missed when you started yourself? Like feeling like the zone had its own, because I think you've mentioned this maybe before, like the zone had its own story specifically and its own place in the world, I guess. Because you feel like in ESO, like you're right, you're very right. That story is so good and it goes on for so long, but you are so engaged and you really feel connected to that place, right?
Yeah, and like I honestly, that could be an entire other podcast. I could talk about the way that ESO does episodic storytelling, because I actually do think in regards to pretty much any other MMO right now, they are the one that has somehow managed to pull this off in a really, really satisfying way. Those maps do feel like I am so excited to go to each of them and to find what that overarching plot is, to find all the little side quests. And oftentimes they have funny little callbacks to other characters or things or stuff like that. They have unique and interesting little challenges you come across. They have all kinds of stuff, right? Guild Wars 2 shines in a similar way in that its maps are just as beautiful, just as diverse. But because the storytelling method is maybe not something that people expect initially, they don't know how to take it in. So like when you first go to that map as a new player and you're expecting to find quest givers, or you're expecting to find, somebody that will root you in it, you don't realize that like you have to literally follow along with an event chain and try your hardest to listen to every piece of dialogue by every person to know what that zone is about. I mean,
that's the thing. I've been doing map exploration recently, and you're absolutely right. I think like this is on my third or fourth character doing map exploration. I'm learning that these maps do have an overarching story and that they do have this like cohesive map to it, this cohesive storyline, but you could only find it by like really peeling back the layers
it's not
of
clear
the
at
onion.
all. And you have to play all of the dynamic events as well. And the dynamic events are on a timer or are triggered, and you don't play through them all. Like if they fail, they're failed. It starts again. Or there's like something changes, and you're like, oh, this is actually really cool. And I never did. Like, I still now, I've not played every dynamic event in the game at all. But there are chains where I'm like, oh, this was such a good chain. There's little Bobby, he needs help with the Norn lands, when there's all the kids running around, they're throwing snowballs at each other, and the whole thing just like snowballs, literally. Oh, that was bad. But like, there's these ways of going from one map to the one end of the map to the other. And I do like hearts, I think it's the same with achievements as well. Like they could easily be, you could fish it,
Yeah.
you could funnel those achievements into maps where they are literally achievements in the maps. And you're like, oh, well, why don't you just kind of chuck an NPC there? I know you have to design this, that, the other, but it does feel like sometimes you could do just with that little bit more depth in that core game. And I feel like
another way to better reflect Endgame Guild Wars 2 for new players is to have each of the starter maps actually be a meta map, because each of the starter zones have a world boss. So the whole narrative of Painsdale could be about this like dark presence in the swamp, and you're like in the town and you see like shadow fiends start popping up, and then things branch to the other areas of the map, and then eventually the map funnels you to the big boss fight of the shadow behemoth. And then leveling, you could just screw leveling, do an upscale system where like you can actually organically explore, and you aren't inhibited by level to experience the entire map. So I think if every single map, not only would the introduction of the story be like really epic, where for humans you're killing the hands, and then your very first map is you having this entire map quest line to go fight the shadow behemoth. That would be really reflective of the current state of Guild Wars 2 for newer players.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that, because I think for me, one of the first moments that really clicked for me with what the game could offer was like the first time I think somebody actually took me to do Shadow Behemoth, funnily enough.
So good.
I think we did that one before I even did the like elemental fire construct, that's supposed to be like kind of the starter one that you encounter.
Did you make a human?
No, I made a Norn.
You did, and they took you all the way to the Shadow Behemoth.
I think it was the first one we did, because I was playing through the story and stuff like that, but it must have just popped or something like that, and I was already pretty far into it, and we just went, or maybe they just thought it was a good one thematically to show.
It is, yeah.
But like those bosses in and of themselves have so much potential, where if, like you were saying, Jeb, they wanted to put a couple NPCs in, or you get into a zone, and I know nobody wants unvoiced anything, but like it would help me personally if like I got in and there was some kind of cutscene-esque thing that, like you were saying, Kroof, like you walk into the village organically in the way you come into the map, and somebody's like, oh yeah, strange things have been happening. And then like the first time you do that, some little message pops up or something that's like, to experience the story of blah, blah, blah. Like, follow the events and culmination of this thing or that thing. And like,
that would be amazing.
You could get like a sense of each region and area, because it takes you through all these important places. Like, you could get a sense of who the Char are and what that means. And like, if you were your race in that zone, if dialogue options came up, you could have something maybe unique that you could say, or like, and they could flesh out what's already there and culminate it in the same way. But you would have, again, I think that would teach you all the basics of like events and chains and metas, and there could organically be little things in there about the mechanics you might use, or I don't know. It would be really interesting. I don't know when they would do it, but I do think that something like that. Yeah, like Cataclysm style.
Man, get on that counter. It's not even been a day. Sorry.
Something like that could really help for new players. And I mean, we need new stuff too, right? It shouldn't always have to be looking back, but I think that setting people out on the right foot in the game, again, it's crucial. It's so important.
Like, at least for the first map, because you have to have that hook. And I don't think the introduction instance is definitely very cinematic, but it hooks you and then drops you really hard.
Are we doing another podcast on this? I think we need an episode on this. What would the episode be called? We got to shift you on, but like, what would the episode be called if it was going to be an episode? It would be like new.
What if you could
Tyria remastered? I don't know.
Oh yeah, Tyria remastered. That'd be fun. I like that.
I don't know.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
I love this topic too.
I know.
Because a lot of people, they like new things. I am actually someone who likes to go back sometimes, and I think this is maybe the perfect opportunity to have these discussions, because like End of Dragons, they're book ending a 10-year story. This is maybe the only time when we could look back and really have these conversations.
I'm literally putting that as a note at the bottom. Tyria remastered next episode. Could be. depending on
Could
what
be.
news we get. Because also, I'm not sure if maybe we'll have one every 2 weeks or every week, because kind of getting hyped for the expansion. I'm like, anyway. Okay.
Jebro,
Do you have to go?
I do have to get
That's
going.
okay. That's okay. Are we? I kind of wanted to end a couple of points. Do you want to? Rook and Kroof, do you want to stay for a little bit longer, or do you have to go?
I can stay
I
for a
can
bit
stay.
longer.
Okay.
You don't need me.
We
You
do.
never
I miss
did.
your face.
Boots, we need you within our hearts.
Okay, Boots.
Our
Do your
souls.
exit. Do your exit. Say your thing before you go.
I'm Boots. See you later.
Okay. It was awesome. Actually, please
Bye,
check out
Boots.
description with all the things.
Bye, Boots.
Bye. Have a good one.
Yeah, Boots.
Okay, how do I? What button
Leave
is it?
meeting. Boom.
Boots is good at technology and also at making bad builds in Guild Wars 2.
Is this the turn off the? No. What?
Oh,
I pressed
no.
the-
Oh, let's see who we are.
Oh, shit.
I'm still Kroof. Let's see. Who am I? Oh, I'm Jebro now. Hello,
All right.
governor.
Don't
Hello.
speak
Shave your
that
head,
way.
lead the podcast.
Oh, damn. Not
Right
shave
now,
my
shave your head right now.
Okay, I'm doing the stuff and the things. Okay. Your face is there. Oh shit. I'm gonna talk while we do this. So
Fill the dead air. Fill the dead air.
I'm trying to fill it because the podcast when it's on the where's Kroof? Kroof's gone. Kroof's completely.
Hi.
Yeah, there we go.
It'll just be an ambient, disembodied experience. It's just audible, you know.
Your ghost is somewhere in the
Audible.com.
There we go. Okay. We're there, yay. Okay, so
I'm quite
Fuck,
high
I
up. I have to crouch.
Boots left and everything. The reason I'm talking absolute rubbish if you're listening to this like somewhere is because one, I do that pretty often. And two, I'm trying to sort out the cameras because they change when someone leaves. Okay, so revamp new player experience, revamping old content. Actually, we've done quite a lot of it. Is there anything else you wanted to both add? Like, you know, maybe stuff like post EoD or during that it's important that they do as they think about retaining players or thinking about the future?
I saw controller support in chat, which I do
Ooh.
agree with. I do
Oh,
think
yeah.
controller support, and this is a whole nother thing that is very hard for almost any company to do, and I'm not actually expecting it, but I think if there was a way to get it out on consoles, that would be incredible. But that is much harder than anyone ever thinks it would be.
Yeah.
So,
Even a Steam app on consoles, I think that's a separate thing, isn't it? I don't know. Sometimes I don't know anything, and that's fine.
Well, Steam Deck, what's it called? The Steam console thing. That's gonna. I mean, if Guild Wars 2 goes on Steam, it's gonna have to. It's gonna have to have some kind of controller support.
I think Guild Wars 2, just combat as a whole, it works really well. And the camera customization options that you have, controller support, I think would slot so well into this MMO. Many MMOs, you're like, I don't know if it would work. Final Fantasy surprisingly does it. I still have no idea how Final Fantasy is able to do it with the amount of
me
buttons,
neither.
but they do it. And I think Guild Wars 2, it would be absolutely perfect.
And ESO does it, and their like weapon swap ability set kind of thing is very similar. So yeah, I think it would be perfect. And I know so many people that
Yeah,
have
that's true.
even just accessibility concerns where they need the flexibility of having something like a controller setup. So it's tough because a lot of times I just have to tell them like, well, you can kind of do it through like Steam if you like map, but like right now because the game's not on Steam, you have to go really roundabout and use these things, and you can like ask people for various preset mappings that they have. And so if there was just at the start of the game, you log in and it's like, are you on controller keyboard? And you could just pick, or you could just swap it in your settings. That would be so nice. So nice.
Imagine
as for,
playing
like,
on a controller. Sorry. It's just like I was just imagining myself in Guild Wars 2 controller. I'm just like, this is weird.
I feel like it'd be really chillaxed because
There
we're
we
always
go,
like,
yeah,
on
I'd
our
love to do
keyboards.
that.
Like I would just be like,
And a lot of the content in Guild Wars 2, I honestly think is fantastic for couch gaming. Like the open world exploration stuff, the jump puzzles, all of those sorts of things would be so comfortable and so fun on controller, where I honestly think that we were even just talking about the early leveling experience, right? But like if I was sitting on my couch and I was just running around exploring zones and I had a bag of popcorn next to me, like that'd be fine. That would be really chill. And I could actually see it being something that if I was just kind of like on my, I was a new player looking at it and I was, I pull up all my games on console and I'm like, what am I going to play? I might run around to Guild Wars 2 some more. Like to me, it does open the door for a new audience that, I think there's a certain sense of decompression with that kind of environment. Although, of course, people can also play very competitively on controllers and things but...
Throw your controller at your TV.
Yeah, I mean, like, and chat, there's a hype train going on right now. So, what was I going to say? Yes. Also, console. I mean, can you imagine? Oh, don't give me. Oh, I don't know. Don't give me that. It's not good enough, Kroof. Okay. Like, I mean, what else would booster? Like I'm talking about down the road, like post. This is not during. This is like, well, during. It's always gonna be during, isn't it? But like post launch, like Steam and then console, like play for free. How many people play like MMOs for free?
Console. Nail down Steam first, but Guild Wars 2 would work really well as a console game.
Same time. Screw it. Let's go.
Oh damn, we're going full force. I think that it would actually work really well on console because the payment model is so great. It's just literally like any other game. You just buy the product and you can play it. So it's great. Oh my god, the chat just went flying. Big hype. All right, I got distracted. But yeah, I really think console. People have been talking about Guild Wars 2 on console since like 2013, 2014. I've seen so many people talk about it. Is it something in the future? Possibly. I think it would be really easy. Not easy, but the game would feel easy to transition to console.
Okay, I think that would be good as well. Everyone, thank you very much for the gifted subs in chat. You are very much appreciated. And like Glenn said, who is probably better at marking than I am by the sounds of it, if you want to get involved in Hype Train, you should come to twitch.tv/JebroUni on a Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific, where you can sit there and wait for the podcast to start for a while, and it will hopefully start around about 12:30ish. Thank you, very kind. Yes, I would love to have it on console. It would be fun. I think Rook, what you're saying, like the couch gaming experiences. I think when companies can transfer you from can almost have you in a way, this is interesting to think about, where you're playing a game on your own in front of a PC and then they can make you transition to a couch or a sofa or an area which is comfy with friends, where you can kind of like, I don't know, you can be in that space. Like, I think games that can do that are really, really awesome. And I think that's just games where you can play on a PC and then you can play on a console. That's cool. And then if you can have that transition, make it easier in some way, I know, even with progression and stuff, it's cool. But I would love to. I just imagine like playing on running around a jump puzzle or something like you said, and just like sitting down on the sofa and just, that would be sick.
Cool. We're all talking about Guild Wars 2 on console, but like, when is Guild Wars 2 gonna come to PSP? No. That's like what I really want. Where's the Nintendo DS support?
Where's my mobile Guild Wars 2?
Well, it will if it's on Steam. Yeah, it will be coming. It will be coming soon. Like, I mean, people play. You can play. What is it? Nvidia? Is it the Nvidia Shield? I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
You can play it on your phone if you really wanted to. You can play it whatever. Like, I mean, ESO is on Stadia, Google Stadia. So you can play ESO right now on anything as long as you got a screen in the internet. It's ridiculous, right? Like, how ridiculous is that? And you can play it with their controller. It's like the world, man. It's just a ridiculous place.
But other than console, if I were to say one thing for the End of Dragon's current or post release,
yes,
I would like to see more trailers. And not just like trailers showcasing the environment, but like gameplay trailers that are akin to 2010 Guild Wars 2 trailers, where they highlighted the game and its action. I feel like that's been kind of missing with End of Dragons trailers. There's been a lack of action in combat.
I think you said the char in the taxi. I was like,
Or
you're
the-
fired. Again.
There's also it's so tough because the trailers for End of Dragons have been beautiful. Like that cinematic
Very
one that we had is
gorgeous.
gorgeous. But again, I agree because it's if somebody was watching that who didn't know anything about Guild Wars 2, they would probably just be like,
It's like
Who's-
Stardew
wait.
Valley.
so who am
Yeah.
I? And who's the bad guy? And what am I gonna
Can you give me an example trailer so I can play in the background? what do you
announcement
mean? Which
trailer.
one? Do you mean the
Like-
gameplay trailers or do you mean...
Well, like End of Dragons announcement trailer.
Oh, you mean... Oh, I
That's
thought you
what
said
we're
the core...
referencing right now.
All right, I thought you meant the core one. Sorry, Kroof, when you said that.
No, I want trailers like that. I feel like we haven't really been getting those.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I understand.
So like even if they had done I don't know, a full trailer, and maybe there will be something coming, right? That was like a longer trailer,
Like a
but
release one, yeah.
it had something like, it all began when, you stepped up, you were the hero. This is obviously
Clearly, we
then I
need to get
stepped right back down.
voicing
Sorry, okay,
this.
here we go. Let me try again.
Go on,
Let me try
do
again.
your
It's like-
when you stepped up needs to be in there. Go on, do it to the trailer. Do it to the trailer that's on now.
The world of Tyria, a place of wonder and magic, divided amongst rich races of people, but also full of perilous dangers. And then it like shows you all the little races, the little things, and it's like it all began when you stepped up, and then it's you like becoming commander when you did. You united the disparate people or whatever, and such and such and such and such, and it led you to the greatest magic of all, dragons. And then there's just like 5 minutes straight of Aureen looking beautiful, because that's just
Oh,
for me,
that's
not
biased.
just-
That's very
And then-
biased.
Bias.
Biased.
And then at the end, it's like you are
Based.
now a dragon champion or whatever, but you faced your greatest threat yet. And like, if there had been some kind of, I mean, it doesn't even have to be that literal, but some kind of trailer that I think gave everybody a grounding of what they could expect is like, what are you in Guild Wars 2? Who will you become if you yourself set foot in it? And of course, you don't want to like spoil the entire thing, but it does feel like, I think for people watching it, they're like, this is pretty. And I like
Well,
dragons.
I think every trailer innately spoils the Pythagorean.
Pythagoras
Freytag-
theory?
No, not the Pythagorean theorem. It innately spoils the Freytag's triangle of narrative structures. Every trailer, there's the beginning, it shows the beginning, it shows kind of the middle rising action, and it usually shows the climax. If we look back to all of the expansion trailers, particularly Path of Fires, we see the moment when Balthazar dies in that trailer. We just didn't have any context of it.
Yeah.
But it was, you have to hit all, not the Pythagorean theorem, you have to hit all of basically Freytag's triangle. You have to hit the Freytag's triangle even within a trailer. And I feel like we're kind of missing the rising action with End of Dragons currently.
Is
to
the
get us-
hypotenuse triangle just not as important?
No, hypotenuse.
Hypotenuse
no.
not important. No one
If I
cares.
want to get high on pot, I would do it another way. that's a joke.
It's
They
a
should put
joke.
a lot of
Is
pot
it a
in the
joke?
trailer, and then everybody would play Guild Wars 2.
That's actually a joke. isn't it?
You're the dankest hero in all of Tyria.
Dankest.
Smoke
I'm sorry.
every day.
Oh.
No, but I agree with you in that I feel like people who are curious about what Guild Wars 2 has in store for them, and
Yeah.
in hearing about this new expansion, probably just from the sheer trailers that we've seen, don't understand exactly what they're going to be getting into, or even what the direction of the setup of the story for End of Dragons will be.
Mhm.
Those of us who have experience with it,
Yeah.
we have an idea that Cantha is a place, and we have an idea of what might be bringing us there. But I think that a lot of other people don't have the theory crafting, lore crafting context to be able to say, like, this is the fight I'll be jumping into. This is the, the thing that I'll be doing.
Thank you, Glenn, for that, that clip. I played the trailer while you were talking.
I just think it'd be neat, and they should
Would be.
show each of the races you can play as. They should show, like, again, there's so much to show in this game that's so good. I had this thought too of like other things that could be done that would be kind of small things, and it hit me. I think it could be really amazing if they also did something like a referral bonus for Guild Wars 2, where you could have like a referral code, or you know, somebody could say that you referred them, and there could be, again, like something else there.
Like pets
There's
and
like
stuff, and get what's
Like
the Final
recruit a
Fantasy?
friend.
Yeah,
like a
friend.
recruit a friend.
What's the Final
and you
Fantasy
could get something.
Prize like things you can get?
14 has like you get these feathers, each of you, that you can trade for different rewards. But like if you, there's like a 2-seater mount and stuff like that, and little things that, again, I think kind of encourage you to like journey together. It'd be really fun if they had something like that where I think the birthday gifts and things, and honestly in the equivalent of a subscription reward, are way better in Guild Wars 2 than they are in 14. They kind of just like left them to die and have not added any new ones for anybody for years. But the actual referral system, I think, is really great, because yeah, if you could give people a little something, and then even something that would make it easier for them to adventure with those friends, some kind of bonus you get if you're together, or like a waypoint thing that is for each of you, where if you each have it in your inventory, you can immediately waypoint to your friend. It would be kind of like the unlimited teleport to friend. Or I think those sorts of things too could be a small thing that wouldn't involve overhauling the whole core game that could also get people in and referring it.
That would be nice.
That would be nice. Yeah, I think that's actually a really, really good idea. I think there's loads more stuff where I'm like, I feel like almost these are separate podcasts. There's like revamping old systems. There's like revamping this, that, and the other. Balance was something
I love old systems.
Yeah, exactly. We can do that. The balance, quickly to remark on that as well, which is what Boots was mentioning earlier. They did kind of give us the remit of like balance is going to be fast and furious every so often, a lot more regular, and that's something I'm really looking forward to. If they can keep up that cadence of like being a regular thing that occurs in the game, then that will be very, very awesome. I would also think that making sure their balance is positive. No, their balance is very. They start to think about how players make the game a lot easier in different ways, and how they can really sell, because of something, Rook, you said earlier, which was very important, which I wish I'd kind of harked on a little bit more. And that's the combat, and also just some of the fights. So you're talking about Kadim, and thinking about all the other fights where, you know, there's so many intricate parts of these fights. The reason that Guild Wars 2 and movement is a big part of that, you know, there's action, combat, movement, moving out of areas, dodging. That's a big part of the game, but a lot of these things are cheesed through with other mechanics, like with abilities and stuff. Sorry?
Healing.
Or healing, barrier, Aegis, distortion, all of these things. Which you should just be made to do the mechanic, and if you don't, you die. I'm not saying that you can't cheese some stuff. I think that's okay, but like, you know, making sure that your combat reflects how you want people to play the game, and instead of like being like, people can choose about doing this, and obviously they're not doing that intentionally, but we're finding ways. And when that kind of happens, to be like, you know what, we don't feel like you should be able to do that. Maybe you should be able to just play them how we kind of. Not saying that they will, you know, arena that should stringently be like, you should play it this way and this is the only way, but different options, but not things where you just be like, we'll stack 10 of this one thing and we just use this one ability.
5 Scourge, 5 Firebrands.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but like I guess it gets people into content, they can play it a little bit easier, so it is a little bit more accessible, but I don't think that's really good. It's just a personal thing, I don't know, but I really accentuate the combat and the tactics and the way just how unique it is, because I think there is fights where I'm like playing now and I'm in a new raid group, and also a couple of months ago, and I'm just like, this is really easy, it's cool because it's a different way, but I really preferred the old way where I actually played the mechanics.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Balance.
The thing is
sketchy.
Sorry. Yeah. I mean, like, you can play the mechanics. It's funny because I think that no matter what, this will always be an impulse for players in any game, literally ever. Can we find a way to nullify or make easier or faster or more convenient certain obstacles that are in our way? And I don't necessarily think that that's not a bad thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're talking about cheesing, which, yes, technically you can. I think you could quantify it as that, because you are completely making irrelevant certain things that you would otherwise need to take into account.
I mean, I'm not going to get anything about cheese specifically.
But at the same time, if the game does allow you to do that, if the game gives you those tools that can be used in that way, I would just say that you're just coming up with a different answer to the problem, you know?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So it's like, so then is it really that it's that, or is it that like you need to set limits on how many of what type of class can go into things? Does it mean that like there needs to be a cap at certain stacks of certain types of things so that like you can't just absolutely ham it? Like, those things I think for sure. And when we were talking earlier too about the idea of them using something like the pool of memories to even go back and do strike missions or redo various combat encounters, I think that would actually also be an incredible opportunity where if they wanted to change certain key things in certain fights throughout the older story or stuff to give players more of an experience and maybe a better tutorial in a sense with those certain encounters that they'll come across in the story, they could even like replace a lot of that stuff, you know? They could revamp certain missions and have it be some kind of challenge mode that you can do through the pool of memories, but that also just at the same time get added in a different version into the core game and overwrite whatever's there or something. Or because there are some spots where I think that I'm trying to figure out how to voice this, where certain encounters, especially as you're leveling and if you're playing solo, they require you to know certain things, but as a new player, if there's nothing there that specifically teaches it to you, you just die over and over and over and over, and you don't understand what's happening. And like, it can make it frustrating for players, especially new players who are just trying to get through this instance or this thing. So to have something there again, where they could even revamp that, doing double duty, might be a little bit easier and give maybe more of a direction in how they build the language and mechanics of the game, even in the fights and the story itself.
I think a balance. I'm okay with certain bosses being able to be, gained a little bit more. Like if you get a little bit extra DPS, you can maybe skip something. But I feel like that's fine when it's in small situations, but I feel like that is the majority of raids at this current moment, where almost every raid boss can be gained in some way, where you don't have to do something, or you're faced with a life-threatening mechanic, Veil Guardian as an example, the green circles, but the current balance of the game allows you to completely avoid any threat by just bursting barrier and healing, because these aspects are so strong in PvE and they have been unchecked for so long that you no longer have you do not need to engage with that mechanic if you just have barrier. It is such a simple, it could be a simple fix if you just reduce the barrier application. And I think with the Spectre, I said it many times, but I think support in this game could use a very large overhaul with single target abilities and AoE abilities. I think that this is a golden opportunity to actually revamp and take another look at how support is done in this game, to where it's not like you have two healers, you can completely avoid all the big mechanics of the fight.
I mean, some of that though does depend on having healers that understand how to heal in the game and how it operates. Because I will say, like, when I first started out healing in raids, I don't know what I was doing that much. I mean, I had raided on healers in other games, but it's very unique to Guild Wars too. The way that you use it, how locational it is, all those sorts of things. And it's so funny that you brought up VG, because that's one of the commonly like introduced first bosses for new players. And I had all these veteran players with me who were like, and we just cheese it, so don't do any of the greens. And then we kept dying and we kept dying and we kept dying and we kept dying. And it was like, finally, somebody in the group suggested, why don't we do the greens? And lo and behold, we were able to make it through. It was slower, but because I think it was myself and another new healer, because like neither of us knew what we were doing specifically, or the pacing of healing or stuff like that, the risk was very much still there. So again, it becomes this thing where like, if you are playing those classes and you know all this stuff, then yes, you can completely nullify it. And many groups set an expectation of that from the beginning without acknowledgement to players who might be learning that stuff because they're used to just running it with the same people over and over and over, which again will happen anywhere. But I agree in the sense that it does feel like there are some just tuning things that could be done that could help lessen that a lot. Because yeah, once you learn how to do it and you have an understanding of what buttons to push and what it does, you're like, oh, okay, well, this is not, it's like, oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this
easier.
game. Yeah. Like,
for challenging endgame content, it's like, it becomes almost boring. I don't know.
Oh, it's not challenging.
Boring.
It becomes
almost like a chore in a way where you're like, okay, I'm just going through the motions.
Oh yeah, and then it becomes like, I mean,
and then you don't have to move. You don't have to move.
Nope.
You just stand in one spot altogether.
Which is
There's
not
no
Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, which is not Guild Wars 2 at all.
Nope.
I
a lot of the
agree.
raids.
I hate
they
that.
do that.
When you compare it to something like, I was talking about Kadim earlier, just because I've been so delighted. I mean, I also honestly really liked the Largos twins before that. I think like with the, because again, I think that those are two fights that lean into what Guild Wars 2 excels at, and then makes you use it, like really use it, right? You have to stay mobile during the twins. Like you have to be moving, you have to be dodging out of things quickly, you have to be landing, what you need to DPS wise, you have to adjust and split your group and do all these things that are, mobility related, and you're on this small limited platform, so you have to be smart about where you're dropping stuff. Like I really like that. And with Kadim as well, there's so many things. Like my group was laughing because I haven't seen anything with Kadim because I like to keep myself sight unseen on these fights until we actually do them together. And we were working through Kadim and somebody said like, and there's a jump puzzle at the end. And I went, are you serious? And they were like, and it's timed. And I was like, I hate it and I love it. I am so excited because like, to me, again, that's intrinsic to Guild Wars 2 and it's something that shines. Somebody in chat even mentioned earlier the updrafts on Gorseval, those sorts of things. Like, again, I like the range of difficulty in fights. I do think there should be some that are easier, more accessible, especially before strike missions were a thing and we could do more one-off difficulty scalings. But I think there is very much a place for PvE and challenge in this game in regards to that, even if it's unconventional by other means in games. So I don't envy anybody who has to tune it and plan it and figure it out. But it is so fun when Guild Wars 2 just nails it, like it's so different than any other MMO that I play, and it's one of the things I love the most about it.
It really is. You're right. Like leaning in. I think that's definitely. I like that phrase, leaning in anyway. But like leaning into what Guild Wars. I'm writing it down. I like that.
Like a collage, a nice little inspiration board.
Yeah, well, my vision board.
The vision board.
The vision board.
That's when you get the legendary item vision and you just tack it to a board. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing here.
I really wish that it had just like in the legendary armory, it had just been called like vision board.
Yes.
It's just like taped
like I've got my aims and here are all the list.
If there was personal housing, that would be a great thing. You could like have a anyway.
That's the future. Sorry. That's the future, isn't it?
Dream
housing.
Scenarios.
I'm gonna put that there. I think we're gonna have a housing.
Could be in guild halls.
We're gonna have a housing podcast episode.
There should have been an apartment complex in the guild hall for End of Dragons. There should have been an apartment complex.
We posed the question earlier, right? We've been talking about things they could do to like polish up previous things or continue to add and use and reuse that. And then I was talking about like, what is something that you could do that would be a big feature that would draw people in a sense that would be something brand new to the game that also generates that talking. And with the other systems that we have in housing, in Guild Wars 2, if they were able to figure out a real housing system and release that at some point, and, take all this inspiration from other places that are doing it, like they have the foundations in it already with guild hall decorations, that's something that again could bring people to this game. And you could tie all sorts of pieces to every other thing and piece of content in your game. Getting people to get their scribe up, even with the new fishing, having it so that you could display various fish on the wall, having it so that, there's so many things they could do with that again, I think would encourage people to connect to many other pieces of content in this game.
I thought you were going to continue. Sorry.
There was
no end sentence. It was like, and someone carry on. Okay. Where am I going with this? I think we're gonna start to move to a close, because I think part of me is starting to avoid my revision of my
As you should. You don't need to do
material,
that.
Unfortunately. I have human development to read up on, and some Erik Erikson at the moment, actually, and some psychodynamic theory.
Erikson Day.
No, that's not the same person.
SpongeBob fans.
It's definitely not the same person, but it's okay. He's dead. I'm tired. I don't know
now
why.
it's awkward. You best. I'd say it's best time to start heading towards wrapping things up.
Okay, so the podcast has hit about 4 hours.
I'm gonna eat my toenails.
The last time the
hungry,
podcast was
Jebro.
this, I know I am now as well. It's actually almost 5 p.m. Holy crap. All right, the last
Boots got
podcast
out
that
at
was
the
this
right
long,
time.
he did. I'm sorry, but I enjoy talking to your faces.
I
enjoy your face too.
I love talking.
It's so fun. It's like we all enjoy doing it. And that's why we make content or something.
We
do
need
podcasts.
we need to do a stream weekly where we all just play the game on our own channels and just hang out. We need to do this.
I would be
Yeah, I'm
down.
down.
We need I think the partnership with Arena Partners, we need to just be in each other's streams more often. We just need to do that.
I mean, there's some people I don't care for, but you guys, yeah.
Next episode, Jebro's tea.
Yeah.
Jebro
everywhere.
revealed.
I'm actually a massive arsehole.
Oh my.
Oh no,
Gotta
Raider,
get
I
that
see in
checked
chat.
out.
Actually, I believe that Kroof is fully recovered from syphilis.
Oh my god.
So we don't need to talk about it in 2022.
I got my medicine.
Yeah.
I got my doxycycline.
now it's toe fungus and
no,
growing toenails.
it's not.
It's not syphilis, it's chlamydia.
Oh,
Oh,
God.
Kroof, you got it, Kroof. Which one of us is gonna start taking control of just making sure you don't keep picking these things up?
I just love that everyone else who is just arriving has no idea what this
Glenn,
is.
you're always welcome to join us. I'm going to quickly escape us from this. It's been a while. Last episode was this list was this long or close to. It was actually when Glenn was here, and then otherwise it's not been this long for months. That's what they said. Right. So
Is it?
I
Is
don't
that
know.
a normal thing that people say in that context?
What was it I
mean,
said?
hey, a while ago I said long, lengthy, and meaty, and I just broke down. So
It's true.
sometimes we just have to commit to the bit. We got to commit.
If you don't commit, then you're not legit. Let's go.
Wow, bars.
That's
Are you
legit.
a barb, Jebro? Are you gonna put
I'm-
me in a dungeon under and these bitches ain't eating, they die in hunger?
I mean, to be honest, if I'm
What
honest,
words did you just say? What did you just say?
Any barbs in chat?
you said bard, didn't you? Or did you say barb?
Barb.
Oh, barb. I was gonna say, toss a coin to your Jebro. Toss a coin to your Kroof. Toss a coin to your Crook.
I'm hungry.
Rook, sorry. Thank you very much for watching this podcast. Oh god. Kroof has been fired.
Yay, finally.
I thought I'd
Start
just play the video.
2022 right.
Starting off with a bada swing and a miss.
Talking about misses.
think we
Content
gotta
to
go
miss,
on.
probably Kroof. Kroof, do you want to tell us?
Content to see.
To
Content
see.
to never
The
miss.
opposite of miss.
Damn. Well,
Content
everyone.
to watch. Outro during Prickle Patch Holiday. You can't
you.
hear it, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to this lovely podcast. Thank you for asking me on yet again. I had a lovely 4 hours.
You actually were an accidental ring. You were like a misdial, but video.
No. Damn. Ugh. Thankfully, I have no life, so I always pick up. Oh, I got a like. But hi, I'm Kroof. I do a lot of YouTube stuff with Guild Wars 2. I have a bunch of new video ideas that I'm working on and all that stuff, and love to see you over there. But here on Twitch, I stream Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And yeah, I'm just really hungry. So thanks for having me.
Rook.
Jebro.
But the music was really good timing.
Are we just saying names?
It just ended. Well, I just said Rook and then the music ended, and then I was like, damn, that's good. Unfortunately failed, but you can't hear the music, so I'll let you off. Tell us about yourself, what you do, where you do it, and do you like Kroof?
This puts me on the spot. No, I don't like Kroof.
That's fair.
Love Kroof.
Oh, this is amazing.
Kroof, I love you. And I've been meaning to say it for a long time. Kroof senpai. You're way younger than me though, I think, so I don't know if it works. Yes! Because my respect for you is so great.
There you go. Your respect goes past age.
Hey everybody, I'm Rook. I'm the official voiceover artist, and I also am the script writer for all ArenaNet trailers.
I was like, where are you going? This is some new role we don't know about. I was like, wow, congratulations.
Look, I'm just manifesting my dreams.
That's the way of doing it.
When I'm not doing that, you can find me on Twitch or YouTube. We had a rebrand. I was previously Bird of Chess, but I don't know anything about chess, and my name is Rook, so we rebranded to Rookery, Rookuri. I play a lot of MMOs, but mostly Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy 14. I'm very happy to be an ArenaNet partner alongside these lovely folks, and I just love talking about games. I love everything from casual content to endgame, and I'm a big fan of lore, storytelling, and how games create the experience that we all get to enjoy and that brings us together. So I love getting to do it on things like this podcast. Thank you for having me back again. And in the spirit of honesty for 2022, I have the syphilis now.
Okay.
I have passed the torch.
So many things have happened all at once. I don't know how to deal with them, but Jeb, I'll turn it over to you. Also, please listen to the previous episodes if you don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's not just, there is no dislike for people who have conditions and such and so forth. I will just add in the end, even though we're clearly joking, people. It's okay.
It's just a bacteria. Okay. Life happens. Just get on some doxycycline. You'll be fine. It's just bacteria. You're good.
Kroof, just stop continuing. It's okay.
Kroof is telling the truth. And
go back to like episode 15. I don't know. What episode was it?
Episode 1? I don't know. I feel like it was pretty early on.
Jesus. There's a cream for that. Yeah. Everyone, thanks so much for watching, listening, live, whether it be live or not live, which is the opposite of live now. Twitch.tv/JebroUnity on a Friday. 12 p.m. Pacific, we chuck on the music and the screen, and at some point the podcast will begin with ridiculousness. I do have a way with words, very true. If you do want to support me, you can go to my YouTube, youtube.com/JebroUnity. Same on Twitch, Instagram, Twitter. Only Knees is different, but that's an underscore. And otherwise, that is the first podcast of 2022, and it was a fantastic one with an amazing set of guests. Please follow, like, comment, go and subscribe to them. The crying Rook and the cheery Kroof. As well, and don't forget about Boots. And exactly, I was about to say that. And our friend Boots as well, as everyone who has ever been on this amazing, wonderful podcast. Please check out the links.
Boots' shoe sizes.
What Boots' shoe size is?
What Boots? And what
how is that relevant to the outro?
It's not. I want to know what size Boots would get if he had to buy boots. Anyway.
This is important. This is the outro now.
2 boots. We'd have 2 boots. There is only one size boots. I will have boots. And then it would just be there. 9.5. Okay.
9.5 says chat. Okay, yeah, I'll take it.
Thank you very much for watching this episode 34 of the LightBringers podcast. If you do want to watch it on video, go and check it out on YouTube, Twitch, and also Spotify, where you can watch videos as well. Goodbye for now, and have a sandwich.